This is Nationalist Review.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to America's most resilient right-wing podcast, coming to you from deep in the heart of Antifa-communist occupied Western Washington. I am, of course, your regular host, James Alsop, back as always from the remote command center here. I'm out of the inland northwest and deep in, like I said, Antifa territory. Pretty scary stuff over here if you go into downtown Seattle. Joined by the man who's been kicked out of 109 countries, or sorry, 109 Twitter accounts. Freudian slip. Must be something. Must be their fault. You know, couldn't be anything unique to him. That is, of course, Eli Mosley. How's it going, man?
Good. I'm actually my future generations are gonna have PTSD based on how many Twitter accounts I've had to make. So I finally feel their pain.
The Twitter diaspora.
Yes.
A man without a home.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I've also heard that you've been on the alt-right podcast, alt-right politics podcast lately, podcast cucking Richard Spencer.
Yeah, Spencer's been taking a little bit of a sabbatical, and in his place, myself, Greg Ritter, and Don Camillo have taken over the podcast and removed all Depeche Mode references and all of the historical autism I've kept to a minimum on the show, so that's pretty fun.
Well, with Don involved, that's a pretty hard undertaking to go through with. So, I commend your effort there. So basically, for those of you out there who don't know who you are, what you do, what's just a quick synopsis of your activism, your history in right-wing activism? It's going on about a year now that you've been involved with all this stuff. So, what's this last year been for you?
It's been a little bit over a year now. Essentially, last year during the inauguration, I went around with a cell phone camera and was trolling, shit libs that were crying about Donald Trump being elected, which is when I made that, now infamous or famous video of the white men against Trump sign and the guy,
fellow white men. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that. I made that video, and then I kind of became addicted to activism. And from there on, I just kind of started organizing a bunch of these events, helping people help people plan a lot of these events that you've seen in 2017, from the anti-war rally to Spencer's College Tour stuff at Auburn to some of the smaller events in DC, even the bigger events in DC as well. And I just kind of was doing something every weekend. So me and my good friend William Clark just went around. Every weekend it would be, I had my normie job. It was like a Thursday or a Friday. And, he'd text me and say, hey, what are we doing this weekend? And we force ourselves to do something every weekend. So I got really immersed in alt-right activism, became essentially addicted to it in a way. And I learned a lot this year with all this stuff. And I was in Identity Europa for a while, and then I became the CEO for a short period of time. And I've been kind of, since then, focusing on Operation Homeland now and trying to set up a sort of larger infrastructure for the alt-right as far as activism goes, and make sure that the lessons we learned this year and the lessons we continue to learn get passed down throughout the movement as a whole. So it's been a pretty interesting year. It's definitely been the most chaotic year of my life. It feels like it's been 10 years just pushed into one. It's been a really weird thing when it comes to time, but it's been a great year, and I'm excited for 2018 because we've got a lot of great stuff planned, and we're not going anywhere as far as activism goes.
Yeah, definitely. And the cool thing about that too is that you were able to get started with your activism just with yourself and a couple friends. You didn't need a larger organization. And of course, being in a large organization is great because it can give you, connections and resources, and you can be part of a unified narrative and push one message. And that's all awesome. But for people who live in areas where there may not be other organizations present or activist groups present, the ability just to go out there and take it on your shoulders and do it yourself is something that I think a lot of people are really scared of. And a lot of people who I get messages all the time saying, how do I get involved? How do I do this? How do I how do I start making a change? We have so much energy out there with people, but they just don't know which direction to point it in. So the ability to sort of be a self-starter like that is very encouraging, I think.
Well, that's part of
people could learn that lesson.
Well, that's part of what we want to do with Operation Homeland as well, is like help people answer that question of how do I get involved? Because it's not necessarily easy for everyone to do that right away. That's kind of what we want to do. I want to take what we learned over the last year and export it to the entire movement. You know, I remember like a year and a half ago when I don't remember which college it was in Philadelphia anymore, but some college in Philadelphia, I think it was actually, might have been Temple or UPenn, wanted to ban Shakespeare and replace him with a black lesbian writer. And I went and made a quick poster while I was at work that said,
is that what it said?
Basically, I don't even remember what it said at this point. That's how crazy this year's been. It's like I don't even like. This feels like it was years ago, but yes, that's what it said. Archetypal cocksucker. It was a picture of William Shakespeare, basically talking about like that him being replaced or whatever. And I put it all over the campus, and it caused like a huge upstir. You know what I mean? So, I rapidly discovered that you're able to cause a huge amount of uproar with a small amount of work, and it was fun as hell.
Well, you know, the amount of outrage you can generate on a college campus really is something else. I had a firsthand encounter with this starting last year with some of the activism work that I was doing, still in the kind of college Republicans. But, you know, there was more to it than just college Republicans, obviously. Sphere, you know, where we built the Trump wall on several different campuses across my state. And really this year with Charlottesville, because after I got home from Charlottesville, I was greeted back on my college campus with essentially explicitly anti-white protests. The Black Student Union, the Blacks, were really agitated. And
I believe they renamed to the Wakanda Student Union, by the way.
Wakanda nationalism. Yeah, exactly. They were coming out and they were protesting and saying, you know, we need fewer white faculty. We need fewer whites involved. We need, you know, more POC to be in these positions of power. And for a lot of your average, just, you know, white people out there, just apolitical white students, for example, they saw that and they're like, well, you know, what the hell is this? You know, why are these people behaving this way? So the amount of, I think, red pilling you can do just by as one person, right, without an organization is pretty encouraging. So we'll talk more about activism and the future of identitarian or alternative right-wing activism here in the second hour. But let's jump into a story that I know you've wanted to talk about, this whole FISA memo. And I know everybody's covered this to death by now. I was on Third Rail yesterday, and I talked about this in length, so we're not going to spend too long on the story. But basically, for those of you who haven't heard, the Devin Nunes memo came out this past week, which detailed abuse of the FISA, that's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, court system by the FBI and DOJ. Basically, what was going on was the Steele dossier, the Pissgate dossier that you remember from a year ago, was being used as the basis for warrants being sought by the FBI and DOJ to surveil American citizens, specifically this guy, Carter Page. Now, the FBI and DOJ both knew this dossier was baseless, but they both knew it was unprovable. Yet, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, and Rod Rosenstein, oh God, were all signing warrants for continued surveillance based on the contents of this memo, or based on the contents of this dossier that they knew, by the way, was generated as opposition research by Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS, which is a left-wing organization. So, Eli, the question is, I guess, if Hillary Clinton had been president, would we have ever found out about this?
Oh, absolutely.
And how deeply concerned are you about the deep state being opponents not only of the mainstream right, not only of Donald Trump, but of the entire right wing as a whole? Like, if they were doing this to Donald Trump, can you imagine what they'd be doing to us if they had been in charge?
Oh, that's definitely true. I don't think this ever would have came out to see the light if Hillary Clinton had won. I think that's why it's so brazen as well. Like, they didn't think that they were ever going to have to deal with this. They didn't really cover their tracks well, because it's like, yeah, Hillary's going to be president. We're not going to have to, right? But as far as how does this concern me? I mean, the deep state is a real thing, and it's been a thing for a long time. And I think that finally now people are using that term, or at least recognizing the concept of it, is actually really, really good. I'm glad this is all happening. But the idea that this is something that is like never gonna, like, this is, a lot of people are like, oh, this is so wrong that we have a deep state. I can't believe it. Like, this is how governments have operated, like, for all of time. Like, all of time, you have your, like, you know, your king's council who run the whole country, and you have all these, like, spy networks and things like that. The issue really comes down to is how does it operate within the ethical bounds? And the ethical bounds that it's operating under are that of a third world country. You know, import the third world, become the third world. And we're now dealing with essentially African-style politics and African-style intelligence agencies, where they're being used as arms of the Democratic Party in this case. So yeah, that's quite troubling. But you know, we should definitely be a little worried that this deep state apparatus could come down on us as, you know, nationalists.
Right. Yeah, no, I can only imagine what they would be doing with RICO and with taxes and with everything they have at their disposal. You know, we already saw the weaponization of the IRS in the Obama administration against the Tea Party. You know, even the Tea Party guys were getting hit with records requests and you know, IRS investigation. I can only imagine what they would be doing against organizations like well, anything we have here on the more dissident right wing. There's a lot of loopholes I'm sure the government could exploit and try to crack down on here. So yeah, you know, this is not good. This is a bad development. The fact that our government, and I guess we all knew this was true. Like, we all know the CIA is doing unethical stuff. We know the FBI is doing things that are probably not legal and extrajudicial. But the fact that we have this now confirmed, that they are using opposition research to go after American political dissidents and American political opponents, yeah, I think it should be troubling, and it should be very concerning for people. And I think based on the response that we saw from the left, where they were saying, oh, this is it, you know, this is all you got, wow, you know, that should be indicative, I think, to us that they know there's more going on here, and they know this goes deeper. And they are trying to put up a front of hubris right now and pretend like they're never going to get caught for this. And I think, you know, there's more coming in this story. The IG report is coming out soon, and that's going to be the IG report, of course, being the Inspector General report covering the Hillary Clinton investigation. And I think there's going to be a lot more heads that are going to be rolling here, specifically Andrew McCabe, once that comes out. Because, dude, this is not good, and we're seeing now this confirmed, what we've known for a long time, that the deep state was working against Donald Trump and was working against American right wingers. So, dude, these people are going to be held accountable, and I think it's going to be messy going forward. Well,
I hope so. I hope you're right, but I will say, like, I am very skeptical of Sessions at this point. You know, he was basically supposed to be like, you know, like, to LARP, like, you know, racist, right-wing white nationalists going in there and, you know, rounding people up and throwing out sanctuary cities. But, like, he has, in my opinion, been a total failure. The fact that he recused himself, to me, is totally idiotic, because he's trying to go down with his principles or whatever. It's like, oh, as long as we have a fair fight, oh, I'm going to fight you by the rules. And if you break the rules, then I'm still going to follow them. Like, this very stupid, like, traditional conservative attitude towards politics is very troubling. And the day of this all going on, he's sitting there praising Rubenstein.
Rosenstein.
Rosenstein. Sorry, I knew it was a Stein. Right.
One of them.
Yeah, one of those guys. And it's like, dude, you're totally wasting that position, and you gave up your Senate seat for this position. I mean, and the other thing that's troubling is it's not like, even if they could replace him and put someone else in there, like, I don't even trust like Trey Gowdy at this point. Like, he's also coming forward and saying, like, oh, this memo doesn't even hurt the special investigator, the special investigation team on the Russia thing. Like, none of the people I can, like, think of I would trust in that position, unless someone can, like, clone Stephen Miller and, like, put him over there, I guess. Would I trust anyone to actually, and I don't even fully trust him, obviously, to put this, you know, Department of Justice in its rightful place where it should be actually cracking down on these people. Like, let's be honest, like Comey perjuried himself. Like, there's no arguing this at this point. And he should be in jail for this. He should be doing time for this. And I'm not confident that we're going to see that happen. I think there's a good chance that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama also broke the law, and we could find that out. But the chances of them actually going to jail, I think, is slim to none, just because of who they are and the way the deep state still operates.
Can you imagine? I mean, think of the like gaslighting we've seen for like Women's March and for all these other and Black Lives Matter rallies and all this other stuff, and the just media hype we've seen generated for that. I think you would see full scale riots. You would see like civil war if Obama were to go to jail.
Yeah. I mean, a black man going to jail for killing a cop, and you have like several cities across the country rioting and burning down. Imagine the former black president going to jail for
corruption and collusion. Yeah,
like the entire country will be in flames. But I mean, it's obvious to me that that's true. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way Obama didn't know what was going on.
Of course.
That's one thing that I think is going to be in this IG report, is the fact that Obama did communicate with Clinton knowing she was on a separate server, and he used that pseudonym and everything like that. That is
right.
That's huge. And he perjured himself as well with it. I don't know if he was under oath, but he's definitely been asked before if he knew about it, and he said no and things like that. So
yeah.
At
the very least, it's obstruction. Like
yes.
At the very least, Comey. When Comey comes out and he admits that this dossier was unverifiable and there was no factual basis for it, yet he briefed President Trump on it in January 2017 as if it was an official intelligence briefing. And he signed off on the FISA warrant for Carter Page based on this dossier's information. Him and Andrew McCabe both did.
Yeah,
that alone is enough to constitute obstruction of justice. If you sign off on a FISA warrant with knowingly false information or knowingly unverifiable information, there's a strong case to be made there for obstruction. So these guys, and Rosenstein as well, because the indication is he did this as well. So all of these guys are guilty of at least unethical behavior. Whether it rises to the level of obstruction of justice, I don't know. I'm not an attorney or a prosecutor, so I couldn't tell you that. But it certainly seems like it could. And I would like for there to be stuff in the IG report indicating that Obama was somehow directing Hillary Clinton to use the secret server, or there's some kind of direction there. But I don't know if there ever will be anything to come out like that, because the Obama administration, they were very good at having it like an octopus, right? Having one tentacle doing one thing in each of its own areas, like the IRS going after political opponents, and Eric Holder using the DOJ to conduct the Fast and Furious scandals and these other scandals, and just all of these other, like, and Hillary Clinton doing the email server and all of this. There was so much corruption going on that it seems like each hand just knew how to take care of the other, right? Everybody just knew what their job was supposed to be. And I don't know if Obama even had to tell them what to do. So there may not be even a paper trail leading back to Obama on this. It may just have all been assumed by the kind of people that he brought in.
Yeah, it would be nice if the right wing would operate this way. And it just totally does not. Like, they're all pulling in their own direction, and they're on the right. So yeah, it would be nice if the right operated the left when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, or was able to put personal differences aside to accomplish the goals of the group. Absolutely. Yeah. But
So I actually wanted to just shift gears on this topic a little bit, because a lot of people in the alt-right, I've had huge criticisms that I haven't really publicly voiced with how we are covering this story, and how our people are like interacting with the left and the center and the alt-right MAGA people and all this other stuff. And I've had a huge problem with how the alt-right's been covering current events the last couple of months in general. And I think that this is something that needs to definitely be driven home. And that's basically that all these current events that we're talking about, like, our job is not to be the defenders of Trump, the cheerleaders of Trump. Our job is to try to bring our ideology or our narrative to the forefront of thought, and to get it out there in the public sphere. So every time one of these current events happens, we need to be focused on getting that out there. So when it comes to these FISA war, this FISA story, like you saw this on the Warski stream the other night with McFeels and Nick Fuentes and Enoch, basically saying to these centrists, well, are you okay with, so you're against foreign influence on our elections? Okay, right? Yeah. And they're like, yes. It's like, okay, well, what do you think about dual citizens in our Congress? What do you think about dual citizens in our Senate and as advisors to Obama? In the 114th Congress had 28 Democrats and 2 Republicans with dual Israeli citizenship. It had 10 to 12 senators with dual Israeli citizenship. 9 of Obama's top advisors were dual Israeli citizens. And this is direct. This is very direct control of our country by a foreign power. And I think that people need to be inserting this talking point into this whole discussion. If you grant the other side, say, okay, the Pissgate dossier is real, Donald Trump is Putin's boyfriend, and they love each other, and everything, like they call each other up on the phone and text each other what to do, like grant them all of that. Grant the whole thing to them. I would rather be a Russian vassal than an Israeli vassal, okay? Because no Russian has ever gotten a friend of mine killed in Iraq. No Russian has pushed refugees into my country or my cousin countries over in Europe. And that is a fact of Israeli foreign policy and Israeli control. If you have an issue with Russia controlling your country, then you must also complain about AIPAC. You know what I mean? Like there's
right.
It's exactly the same, okay? And you saw on that Warski stream, the centrists basically were forced to take this position because they had been talking for an hour. The centrists or the leftists or whoever, liberalists, whatever they're calling themselves this week. Let's just call them nihilists, I guess is a good way to put it. They're complaining for an hour or two about Russian interference with our election and how they want to investigate it. So when we ask them about Israeli, intervention in our political system, and they're immediately like, "Yep, I have a problem with that too." Like, that is amazing. That means we just took the Overton window and there's an issue that they never even thought about or cared about or had a position on at all, which is, Israeli foreign influence. And now they're taking our position. Those people, those centrists, those nihilists now have the alt-right position on Israeli foreign influence. And I think that's a very, very important thing that we always need to do. We always need to tie the current events to our ideology or our narrative.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And I think that too many people fall into the trap of just trying to defend Donald Trump at all costs. And, that's a criticism that I have had for a lot of the I guess you could say like alt-light punditry, is that they view their job as just defending Donald Trump. Or if you're Mike Cernovich, your job is like just defending Democrats now. I don't know. He's off on a weird thing. But, you're right. And this is one of the narratives that I've been running with for a long time. I've done videos on my YouTube channel where I talk about this explicitly. And I say, if you are ideologically opposed to the idea of foreign intervention in our elections, I agree. I'm with you. I don't want to be controlled by a foreign government either. I want to be controlled by Americans. I think our government should be, our policy should be set by Americans for the sake of Americans, and it should put America first. So if you believe in that, and if you believe that our government should be constituted of Americans, then you necessarily have to be opposed to a lobbying organization where 2/3 of our Congress goes every year. They funnel billions of dollars into our elections. By the way, we pay their government billions of dollars a year, which is then funneled back into our government in order to keep that funding going. It's kind of a symbiotic, cyclical relationship there. You necessarily have to be opposed to that. And by the way, this is government interference that is actually demonstrable, and you can actually prove that it's going on. In fact, it's right out there in the open that it's going on.
Yeah.
They say, at AIPAC, they say, our job is to lobby the American government for the sake of benefits for Israel. Okay, fine. Look, you're being completely honest about what your objective is. Thank you. Now it's up to us Americans to say, this is unacceptable. We don't want this, and this is unethical and should be illegal control of our government. And you guys got to go. You guys have to. If you want to exert control over government, fine. Go exert control over your own government. Stop exerting control over ours. Right? Yeah. This is not your government to exert control over. And I think as soon as you start introducing that narrative, you'll start to see that a lot of these people, some of these people, the more intelligent ones, like the people, look, centrists are not obviously the biggest brain nibbas of the bunch, but they are at least 105, 110 IQ. They're at least, thinking people. And they may be able to say, okay, I accept that. I don't want Israeli influence or Russian influence. But for a lot of these people who are just like shitlibs and who are just repeating whatever Jon Stewart or The Daily Show is telling them to say, they will hear that thing about Israeli influence, and they may say, yeah, okay, whatever, and agree with you just casually. But I don't think that's ever going to set in for them. And so this will then put us in the position where we can expose their hypocrisy and point out the fact they're not ideologically opposed to foreign influence. They're just opposed to Trump and Russia because the media tells them to. And we can expose, I think, the hypocrisy and lack of thoroughness of their position.
Right. Well, the other thing, too, is, like, why do we hate Russia today? The reason we hate Russia today is because they don't want, like, tranny bathrooms. And they don't want, like, this degeneracy pushed on their people. And they have, like, pro-NATO policies. And they're basically against NATO. I mean, look, there's, like... It's very clear that there's an almost ethnic hatred by the media towards Russians. And I think that that's another thing that we can insert into this talk, because it's very clear to anyone who's been paying attention that this is not just about, about Putin or about Russia in general. They hate conservative Christians out of Russia. They just hate them. The media does. The other thing that people should be pointing out is this is exactly how the U.S. has been operating in foreign policy for years. I mean, name a country, please, that hasn't had U.S. intervention in their elections in the past 100 years. Like, there is none. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we just did this in Ukraine, okay? We're trying to encroach on the borders and sphere of influence of Russia. We're putting, we're adding countries into NATO that we agreed we wouldn't add to NATO right on their doorstep, while trying to also interfere with those elections. Like, the idea that we, somehow this has been turned against us and it's an affront to nature and the worst thing possible is totally hypocritical. Everyone's crying about it, and we should be pointing out that this is U.S. imperialism, if it is what happened, which, again, we don't think it is what happened. But even if it was, this is exactly what the U.S. does to other countries. So where's the big deal, you hypocrite? And the other point to this is, which country influences our elections the most outside of Israel? It's Mexico. Mexico's literally sending citizens to our country to vote in our elections. I mean, I hope this election, investigation that they're doing, I hope that this pans out. I've heard it's not going well, and then I've seen that it is going well. I don't know what's going on with it, but I hope it does well, because to anyone who's paying attention and understands what's going on with these elections, like, there must be so much election fraud that it shouldn't even be possible going on. And, Mexico is, even if you can remove illegal voting and illegal immigration from it, their amount of legal citizens that are here voting and making anchor babies and things like that are way above and beyond what any Russians are doing to our society. Like the Mexican government, the former president of Mexico is in Mexico complaining and weighing in on U.S. domestic policy or immigration policy right now. And that affects, and his people that are in this country are listening to him and following, what he says. So, like, there's far more foreign intervention in our government than Russia has ever done. But again, even if I admit that all the Russia is true and Donald Trump really did piss on Russian hookers or whatever it is, like, I would rather have that than being ruled by Israel or Mexico. It's how this, I viewed this whole thing. And I am disappointed with a lot of our people who are just kind of like pushing the normie alt-right MAGA tier talking points about, no, McCabe did do something wrong. Oh, getting into the weeds of this issue is not that important. Zooming out to the highest level and really explaining to people and pointing out their hypocrisy is much better. And we were really good at this during the election or during the primary and during the election with Donald Trump. And it seems that we've kind of lost that edge as a movement, and we need to get back on track. We need to get back on focus as far as pushing our talking points into the mainstream talking points.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I think that line about Mexico is a really good one. And I've heard that from a couple of places before, to foreign influence. Yeah, what is more influential? You know, a couple thousand Twitter bots on Twitter, or 700,000 new citizens a year coming over from foreign countries and getting the right to vote in our elections, and having anchor babies that then will vote 80-20 for the left. I think there's a lot more foreign influence from people who are emigrating here and literally casting ballots than people who are like, retweeting Donald Trump on Twitter. And, this whole idea about election fraud doesn't happen. Dude, I live in Washington State, which is not known as a state for, we're not like Illinois in terms of illegal voting and stuff. And I got 2 ballots sent to me in 2016. Like, I could have voted twice. Like our election security, even here in a state that is known as being pretty good for that kind of thing, it's not very good, right? And so I can only imagine what's going on in Texas or California or Illinois with duplicate votes being cast, multiple ballots being cast, And I didn't vote, so I shredded one of my ballots and only voted in one election because I'm not was not trying to be dishonest. But for people who are viewing this as like a Reconquista mission, who are viewing this as their duty to permanently change the U.S., absolutely, the opportunity is there to vote illegally if they want it. And the idea that there's no illegal voting going on in America is totally ridiculous. The media actually wants you to believe that nobody votes illegally and that no illegal ballots are cast.
There were some counties that reported more votes than there are voters.
116% turnout in some California counties.
And then even
okay,
the Roy Moore election, no one is we kind of dropped the Roy Moore thing, and I think that's good. But I don't believe that the Roy Moore election was legitimate. The idea that blacks turned out in a special election, higher turnout than they did for Trump or for the Trump-Hillary Clinton election or the Obama election is insane. That's so insane. There's no possible way that that's happening. I during the Trump election, the day of, I was actually in Philly, and I saw them handing out who to vote for things, voting guides right outside the voting station.
Oh yeah.
And I saw the 25-year-old white shitlib females walking from house to house in the ghetto trying to get blacks out of the house to vote. These things are real, and anyone denying them is just kind of playing along with the leftist narrative on this, and it's foolish.
Yeah. So speaking of foreign interference and foreign influence in our elections, there's a really good column this week from the New York Times, which is not a sentence I think I've ever said before. It's by a guy, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but I've seen him before. Ross Douthat, do that. I don't know how you pronounce it, but he's a well-established columnist.
I believe it's Doodat.
Okay, she do that. But it's a moment of almost surreal honesty from the left on immigration. So the column begins with the author responding to criticism he received over a column where he encouraged Democrats to work with Stephen Miller and Trump on DACA and immigration. And a lot of the left-wing criticism he received was from people saying that talking to Trump and Miller would be racist, and it would be normalizing racism from the scary racist right wing. And so in this column, the author encourages the left not to completely dismiss some of the immigration restrictionist arguments. And he makes a couple of admissions about immigration policy that I think we on the right should be seizing on and amplifying here. So he says, quote, "First, as mass immigration increases diversity, it reduces social cohesion and civic trust. This is not universal law, as the economics writer Noah Smith has pointed out. There are counterexamples and ways to resist the trend. However, it is a finding that strongly comports with real-world experiences of Europe and America, whereas cultural diversity has increased, so has social distrust, elite populist conflict, and the racial, religious, and generational polarization of political parties. Moreover, the trust problem is not a simple matter of racist natives mistrusting foreigners, since social trust is often weakest amongst minorities, which is one reason why the most diverse generation in America, the millennials, is also the least trusting. So you can see the political effects of distrust, even if you ignore the Trump Republicans entirely. It's one reason campus politics are so toxic, why Democrats struggle to keep their diverse coalition politically engaged, and why the Bernie-Hillary contest produced so many cries of racism and sexism." So this is straight out of our talking points here, man. I mean, the fact they're admitting that immigration and diversity increases social distrust and reduces social cohesion and leads to conflict. Like, and this is, of course, being glossed over in this column, but yes, this is exactly what we're saying. This is the problem with diversity and immigration.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that that our arguments are getting out there and being seen by the people who we're up against, which is good. This is the thing, though. This is going to be kind of the new thing from the New York Times. If you notice, there's been quite a few pieces like this where they do a piece that incredibly insults their base, right? It pisses off their general readership. If you remember the Tony Havador story from neo-Nazi in Ohio, and it's just a normal guy story, and they all complain about it. And then they follow it up with a piece like this that's basically like, come on guys, hear me out now. It's gonna be okay. Like, just hear me out. And in the comments section of the New York Times, like, their readers just rake them over the coals. And it's very interesting because essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep their people from going full anti-white. I think a lot of them a lot of the left has realized that essentially they are acting as if it's 2040 demographics already.
Right.
And it's not. It's 2018. It's the current year there, Goy.
Current year.
It's the current year. And in the current year, you can't be this openly anti-white as the left has wanted to be. They went too hard on the propaganda. They went too hard on, I think a lot of this has to do with their kind of comedy news shows and a lot of their kind of pop culture type stuff going so hard. That they're going too hard too fast. Basically they just don't have good optics is what I'm trying to say. And this is kind of a reflection of that, these types of articles, and it's going to keep happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is, I think, the only reason why they'd be doing this, because, of course, if we think about the the intellectual class, oh God, who reads the New York Times, this is a hard truth they don't want to come to terms with. They don't want to be reading things like this in the New York Times because they want to be constantly looking over the horizon towards 2049 and America's non-white future. So for them to be confronted with this, it breaks the bubble. And the thing is, for the really high IQ people, the high IQ leftists and intellectual leftists, they know the stuff about social cohesion, but they don't care because they have gated communities they can retreat to, or gated walled countries they can retreat to, depending on their ethnicity. And so they don't really mind the whole social cohesion thing. But for your kind of normie leftist to be reading this, it might make them think. And that is, I think, a scary thing for the intellectual class. This may make a regular leftist reconsider their opinion on whether diversity is this good thing. I mean, dude, when we had Steve King questioning diversity is our strength, that was great. When we have Ann Coulter questioning whether diversity is our strength, that's also great. But now we have the New York Times out there openly publishing that diversity is not a strength. Diversity comes with a great social cost. That is something that is a massive victory for us in the sphere of metapolitics. So I'll just finish up this call. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, I think another thing that's important about this is this. I'm sure you saw this tweet chain, or maybe you haven't, since obviously you're not on Twitter since you were banned.
I'm not on Twitter. Neither are you.
Yeah,
neither of us are on Twitter.
Right. So this is from a woman whose name I cannot pronounce. Says, "Fuck you, New York Times, for publishing this article on Holocaust Memorial Day. From me and from those in my family whose voices were silenced during the Holocaust. Shame on you." The next comment is, New York Times is, and these are from blue check marks, and you can guess their ethnicity in the comment section. New York Times is now a white supremacist paper. The multiple Nazi puff pieces, constant pro-Trump PR, and praise for Miller on Today of All Days is not exceptional. It's the guiding ideology of the paper. I don't think every writer there shares it, but it dominates the coverage. Hashtag unsubscribe. So these people think that they're reading the Daily Stormer. Let's be honest here. That's what they think is going on. And it's like, well, go ahead. Reality is
far right, man.
Yeah.
I think we had an episode title like that. Like when these people are confronted with basic reality, like, oh, okay, the economy's doing better and Trump might have something to do with it. They cannot resist but to devolve into screeching banshees about how it's white supremacy or this horrible thing.
Well, here we go. Here's another one.
Astounding.
This is in the same tweet chain. I recently canceled my subscription. I had enough of this dramatic shift to let the voices of a hateful, racist minority to be heard. Paradoxically, tolerance should not be granted to the intolerant. The New York Times doesn't get that, and that's why they promote garbage like this. And then the other girl follows up and says, yes, New York Times promotes a fringe opinion, but that fringe opinion is increasingly held by those in the most powerful institutions of the U.S., including in both media and government. New York Times virulent white supremacy is same as Breitbart's. They just target readers in different political groups. Okay, so what they're saying is that this idea is unpopular in America. It's a fringe idea. Meanwhile, the Harris polls that just came out from, I believe it was Harvard, proved the exact opposite. Like, it's like 86% of blacks want, no immigration or something crazy like that. Like, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to back that up with some sources there. Meanwhile, every shitlib on the planet or with a blue check mark is retweeting this stuff as if it's totally real. These people are entirely delusional in their worldview. There's nothing in the real world that backs this up. The idea that the New York Times is like the left-wing Nazgul version of Daily Stormer is hilarious.
Yeah, no, and they genuinely believe it too, and you can see why they would believe that, and you can see why that sort of belief would emerge. Like, dude, you spend enough time in like downtown Seattle, for example, just like going from coffee shop to coffee shop, or like the University District, or San Francisco, or LA, it's the same thing. Definitely in Seattle and San Francisco, and like your Overton window there. Like the far right begins with the New York Times, and it goes until like it's going down as a mainstream source.
Yes,
for a lot of these people.
You're totally right. Yeah.
So it's like you can see where this reaction is coming from, but dude, the people they're preaching to are the privileged urbanite, right? The only people who agree with that are the same suckers who are paying $4,000 a month for a studio apartment in like New York. So it's like, okay, great, keep going after that demographic, please. Keep talking to that demographic and telling the rest of America that we're the crazy white supremacist ones, because for something like 90% of white America who doesn't live in the same bubble, that same left-wing bubble that they live in, they're going to see that reaction and think, what the hell are you talking about? New York Times white supremacist?
Yeah, the only people that believe this is like hyper white liberals, and like
fellow white liberals,
and like the non-white college students. Like, that's the only people that believe in this like insane ideology. Like, not even mainstream blacks believe in this ideology. Not even like the natural conservative Hispanics don't even believe in this. Like, you know what I mean? The ones that are citizens, like, they don't even believe in this level of insanity. So it's fine,
right,
because they can't even corral their ascendant group together to focus on one narrative.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've talked about here repeatedly on this program is the fracturing of the left and the de-evolution of the left. Each head of the coalition of ascent, it's like the what's that? Not Medusa, but the Hydra, with the monster with like 4 different heads. That's what you're seeing on the Democrats. You're seeing like the really radicalized anti-white segment, which is mostly built up of the Hispanic identity politics people, the black identity politics people, the like revolutionary theory type people. You're seeing the working class white left, a lot of the Bernie bros, which are they're losing influence in the Democrat Party. Then you're seeing like the La Raza types and the Black Lives Matter types, and each one of these different 4 heads of the Hydra here is pulling in a different direction.
No, don't forget the trannies. Don't forget the trannies.
Well, yeah, no, I would count them as part of that, like, first, no, I guess trannies are important. I got banned from Facebook for 30 days for saying tranny.
That's transphobic, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think they were being transphobic of me because I said tranny.
Well, you see this too with their responses to the State of the Union. I mean, we don't have to get into it too much, but you see
5 different speeches.
Yeah, they have 5 different speeches, and the ones from a drooling white male, like not even white Irishman, who's from like a political class dynasty. You know what I mean? Like they're so disconnected from reality. It's hilarious.
Yeah, sloppy Joe Kennedy. That's right. Yeah, okay, so the column finishes up here. He says, for some pro-immigration Republicans, the contempt for Americans is Ayn Randian. We'll all be better off with more hardworking immigrants and fewer shiftless, mooching natives. For pro-immigration liberals, it's the predictable cultural triumphalism. The arc of history is long, but thanks to immigration, we won't have to cater to heartland gun clingers any longer. I mean, that's synonymous there with anti-white. That's what he's saying.
Yes.
In both cases, there's a fantasy of replacement that's politically corrosive, and that's one reason why Donald Trump is president and Jeb and Hillary are not.
Yeah.
Dude, that is, you will not replace us. That, I mean, look, this is the narrative that we've been putting forward for the past year now, coming to a head, and the left is engaging with politics on our terms now. They're engaging with politics using our language on our terms, and this is a fantastic development.
Yeah, it's definitely a you will not replace us, strategy he's talking about, or reality he's talking about. So it's good. It shows that we're getting in their heads, and we're there to stay. So that's really good.
Yeah. No, and I encourage people to find this New York Times article. You can search it just based on the title, "The Necessary Immigration Debate." Find it and share it, and spread that around, because while his conclusions are left wing, effectively, while his conclusions are, yeah, diversity does all these bad things, but like GDP and food is like like essentially how he ends the piece. You spread that around, and people will put a lot more emphasis on the social cohesion, on the polarization of political parties, and the polarization of American politics. They'll place more emphasis on that than they will on food, GDP. So I encourage everyone to read that full article and spread that around. Some more immigration news here. Nothing happening on the DACA deal. It appears to be dead. The Democrats, even after their public humiliation during a State of the Union speech, are making no overtures towards making a deal. So good news for us. Some news from ICE. They've issued a directive to make deportation arrests at courthouses now. So this is from PBS.org. Federal immigration authorities formalized a policy Wednesday to send deportation agents to federal, state, and local courthouses to make arrests, dismissing complaints from judges and advocacy groups that it instills fear among crime victims, witnesses, and family members. So look, you show up to testify in a court case, and you may end up with a one-way ticket back to Tijuana. Yeah,
it's
good news.
No, this is good. This is okay. Well, first of all, one thing that they mentioned in this article is that this is a point that Obama did, right? So Obama did this, and Trump has just stepped it up, and they're freaking out. I mean, look, the idea that this is not a highly supported policy by Americans in general is laughable. I want a world where illegal immigrants are afraid. The idea that, it's going to make them afraid. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Like, that's the country we want to live in. Like, this is how this other
Trump's America
works.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. This is exactly what we want. Like, the idea that I should care about some witness in some trial's legal status while they're just like being a witness for a case where one like Mexican guy killed like another Mexican guy. Like, I don't care. I just don't care. Like, I don't care about your feelings and how fearful you are. I would much rather you just be deported and go back home. And I just, this is like a mainstream view in America. They're trying to gaslight the entire country into thinking it's not, and it is.
Right, yeah, and dude, there's a big problem with these people in the court system already, where they will like hit and runs, like something like I forget, I saw the stat somewhere, something like 40% of hit and runs, something like 40% of accidents caused by people who like get in a car accident and then leave the scene are illegal aliens who just like. Yeah. Who hit somebody and then say, "Oh, I have no insurance. I don't want to get deported," and like drive away. It's like, dude, okay, like we have problems with these people, and that's not going to stop if you just say, "Oh, we'll be nice to you." Like, they're going to keep doing that because like they don't want to interact with the court system. So when we get them, when we have them in a courtroom and we have them in a government building, we have them quarantined essentially. Take the opportunity to get rid of them, dude. Like, if these people show up for court, look, sorry, you got to go back. You got to go back. And I don't, like you said, I don't care if this makes them live in fear. And in fact, I hope it does, because maybe that fear will become so powerful and so overwhelming that they will say, look, I don't want to live my life in a country where I'm not welcome. I'm just going to go back. I'm going to go live in a country where I will be welcome, where I will be a part of society. Like I'm
just into family reunification. Like that's my main policy. I just want to reunite them with their families in whatever country, whatever shithole they're from.
Yep.
But
Same.
one of the quotes from this article is interesting. It's Supreme Court Chief Justice Mary Fairhouse from Washington State says, "This is deeply troubling because they impede the fundamental mission of our courts, which is to ensure due process and access for everyone, regardless of their immigration status." That is such bullshit. That's what the point of courts is to make sure no matter what, we're giving you due process. Like, no, due process and these constitutional rights, like, we got to get rid of this idea that if you're on American soil, you're literally like, the Constitution was meant for you. That precedent needs to be changed immediately, because that's not how it should be. It should be, if you're an American citizen, you get American rights, and everybody else doesn't have any rights. Like, that's how it should be. That's how other countries operate. It's totally BS. And just a real quick thing that I noticed this week, I was in Charlottesville for court with Chris Cantwell and a couple other people for the whole Charlottesville crap. And I'm there, and literally every single person in there that was there for court was either Black or Hispanic and speaking Spanish. And so many of the court people there, like the security guards, and they had a stenographer and all this other stuff. There was like a bunch of translators. Like, there's like 5 or 6 translators. So the idea that this is Charlottesville, Virginia. This is not like Southern Texas or California. This is a place where this shouldn't necessarily be happening. You wouldn't think this is where this is happening, but like half the people there are half the employees there at the courthouse are there to translate for Spanish. Like, it's not the way to efficiently run a court system, which is already a very expensive endeavor.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, here in up in Washington State, we spend millions and millions of dollars every year on English as a second language program, and teaching these kids who are brought over by their parents how to speak basic English. And you think about like school class, like you think about why American public schools are so bad. We always get compared to South Korea, for example, right? This is the comparison people like to do. They say, well, we spend so much more per pupil than South Korea. Why are their schools so much better? It's like, maybe the fact that 99% of kids in South Korean schools can speak Korean, and they don't have to spend all their money on support staff and teaching 4th graders how to, speak basic English. Like, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe the fact that, we're not catering to, 17 different spoken languages in every public school it has some kind of impact on the amount we spend per pupil. Like, dude, if we had a school system where we were not spending money on ESL, we were not spending money on like behavioral, like police states in elementary schools. Like, I'm sure you've seen this at some of the inner city schools where they have armed cops at the elementary school because they don't want the kids to shoot each other. Like, that's how
the school that I went to, well, the school next to the one I went to, Reading High School in Pennsylvania. It's one of the largest public schools in the country, and it's like incredibly dangerous. Like, it's basically it's like going to school in a prison. And it's because it's like that city is like some absurd number, like 70% Hispanic or something like that, Puerto Rican and Dominican. So it's like, maybe they could learn a little bit better. They could learn a little bit better there, guy, if they didn't have a dude with a gun in the classroom with them.
Right. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we have to spend the money on the police and everything, but it is necessary when you have people who are here who don't integrate with our society and are not making any effort to integrate with our society, and they are just fundamentally not interested in that. They're not interested in learning, right? You get a lot of these kids, and I was thankful to go to and privileged enough, you could say, to go to a very good school here in Western Washington. But dude, you go to the schools in California, there's a lot of people there who are just not interested in education. They're just interested in using the school as an open drug market and slanging dope. And so like of course they're not going to be interested in the school. So of course they're going to bring problems and violence with them. But yeah, dude, imagine how much better our education system would be if we weren't spending all the money on diversity. Anyway, speaking of school systems, another story from the New York Times. With DACA in limbo, teachers protected by program gird for the worst. This is a sad story, Eli. This one should really make you sad. Karen Reyes spends her days teaching a group of deaf toddlers at Lucy Reed Pre-Kindergarten School in Austin, Texas, how to understand a world they cannot hear. For the first time in her 4-year teaching career, Miss Reyes, 29, is at a loss. One of nearly 9,000 educators protected by the Obama-era DACA program, Ms. Reyes has struggled to explain to her students, through sign languages and pictures, the uncertainty of her future. I don't know what to tell them, Ms. Reyes said in tears. They understand when I go on an airplane. Maybe they'll just think I'm on a never-ending flight. Oh,
how about this? How about this? Okay, everyone who's listening to this, stop what you're doing, click on the article, and look what she's wearing in the friggin' picture for this article. Like, you have the New York Times coming to do like an expose on your like deaf whatever school. Like, how about not wear pajamas? How about not wear pajamas for your job? They're deaf. They're not blind, you dumbass. Like, what are you doing? Like, put some clothes on and be a professional. Sorry. That made me so mad when I saw that picture.
No, I think the like suction or like fat roll in the Texas Longhorns flannel pants is a really good look.
Oh my god. Yeah, like she honestly must think she's teaching blind kids. Like that's the only thing I can think of that would clearly justify this.
So I don't know about you, but out here, and I think nationally, there's a conversation about how little teachers are paid, right? Teachers need more money. Teachers deserve higher salaries. Okay, I got an easy way to fix that for you. I got an easy way to raise teacher salaries for you. How about decreasing the supply of teachers? There's the old principle of supply and demand out there that applies to labor. And if you had fewer teachers in America, we don't have a shortage, right? There's not a teacher shortage. There is a glut of teachers, in her case literally a glut of teachers, and we have too many, and the wages are too low. So what better way to raise rates? Here's what I want to see. I want to see Donald Trump propose a piece of legislation, the Raising Teacher Pay and Quality Act. And all the left will support it, all the Republicans will support it, and all it does is you find these 9,000 educators under DACA and you physically remove them from the country.
Yeah,
increase teachers' wages, real easy. Easy.
Goodbye. Yeah, I mean, look, this is not just for teaching, but all professions. DACA and illegal immigration and legal immigration suppresses the wages of all these industries. The fact of the matter is the reason that they have to teach DACA students or immigrants in the first place is because they don't speak English and they need to have people who speak Spanish and things like that. So you're going to basically, we need the DACA teacher to teach the immigrant who is the son or the daughter of an illegal immigrant. So it's like this cyclical thing where they're like justifying both, using the other one as a justification. It's ridiculous. Like, right. No, we don't need any of these things. It'll take care of themselves. Like if we just get rid of both. So there's this quote in here that I thought was hilarious. It says, every day, educators are being told to forget about the fact that at any given moment, the rug will be pulled out of your lives and you may lose your job, said Lily Garcia, the president of the NEA, the nation's largest labor union. To see them treated in this despicable way, to see them treated as pawns is just not fair. You know who I'm sick and tired of being treated as pawns? American children. Okay, they're treated like second-class citizens in their own country. Okay, every single stop is being pulled out for these immigrant students, these DACA students, these anchor babies, frankly. And the education system in Appalachia and the South and really all over the country is total shit compared to what it should be or what it would be without them. So I don't care about having the rug pulled out and I could lose my job any day. It's like. And we're sick and tired of being treated like pawns. No, I'm sick and tired of American children being treated like pawns.
Yeah. And if you're really that concerned about losing your job, well, maybe you shouldn't have invested all this money in an education when you knew you're here illegally. Right? When you knew that you were not supposed to be here in the first place. This would be like me going onto some vacant land that I knew was owned by someone and building a house, and then when the property owner shows up and is like, "Hey, dude, you got to leave," being like, "Oh, I invested all my time and money into this." It's like, well, yeah, you're an idiot for doing that because you knew you don't belong here, dude.
Yeah, if you're gonna be illegal, why would you pick a government job? Like, what the? I guess hold on, that's actually the issue here, right? Is that like the illegals tend to pick the government job because they know it's so cucked and that they're so worried about it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, why is our government hiring illegal aliens in the first place? Like let's back this up a little bit. How can you be an illegal alien working for our government, dude? There's a story last year from Japan, and as everyone knows, as the alt-right's resident weeb, I'm an expert in all things Japanese and white Shinto now. But
I was gonna say white Shinto now, yeah.
Yeah, unironically though, white Shinto now. But people don't know if that's a meme or not.
Dude, we came up with that like in Twitter conversation that one day, and like people were freaking out at me, like, oh, like this is so dumb. It's like they didn't understand. I was talking about like the principles of Shintoism. Like if you just like autistically dissect Shintoism into like all of what makes it up, not necessarily like the Japanese like stuff, right? You can have like a European stuff, but the principles and the properties that make up Shintoism would be perfect for a white nationalist, like, future religion. You can even make, Christian white Shintoism. I don't care. Do it with Jesus. Like
they're syncretic. No, the whole principle of Shinto is the spiritual lineage from man to family to the nation to God. Like
and to the afterlife, and honoring the ancestors. Like you see yourself as a steward of like a legacy. Whatever.
Yeah,
dude. I'm with you on this.
If you have a problem with white Shinto, get out, because like it is the perfect philosophy. Yeah, no, but to see people like I'll see on Twitter, and like one of the criticisms, like a lot of the like irony bros or like alt-light will bring up about me, they're like he's not a Christian, he's into white Shinto. It's okay, bro.
Look, I only have 1% Yakut, and I'm into white Shinto. Okay, so that has nothing to do with with race.
Oh no, it is. In fact, I think Richard like retweeted one of my tweets about white Shinto a while back. Yeah. We're doing this, guys. 2018 is the year of white Shinto, so get ready. Get ready. Yes. But no, it is a good philosophy, and I've actually done whole shows on this, and not to like autistically spurg any further, but no, the idea that you are, like you said, you're the steward of your ancestors' legacy and what your ancestors have created. That is, I think, a very powerful message, and it gives a lot of meaning to an individual's life, and it gives fulfillment to an individual's life, because you feel like you are part of something greater than yourself, and you feel like you're not just living for yourself and your own legacy, that everything you do, and you analyze each one of your actions through that lens of, is this honoring my ancestors? Am I passing down a good legacy for my children? Like,
yeah, the other thing is we can like we can worship a pantheon of like white heroes. Like we can worship Napoleon, Caesar, certain uncles, and like a white baby Jesus. I don't like all these things we can worship and pay homage to in like a very real way. Like, I don't know. I'm with you. We're gonna bring white Shintoism to the forefront. I'm gonna contact the guys over at Daily Stormer and see if they can write an article.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. And well, the cool thing about it is it's not even like worship. Like it is syncretic with the philosophy, because Shinto isn't necessarily, okay, fuck it, we're doing this bit. Let's do it. It's not necessarily a religion as much as it is a philosophy. So people can have the Shinto philosophy, but then also believe in the religious tenets of Buddhism, right? Yeah. And so that's what in fact most Japanese people do. So the idea of like a white Shinto or European Shinto style belief system would not be incompatible with Christianity. So if you want to have your Christian state and Christian culture, totally fine, and that's totally syncretic with a belief system where you believe that your nation is ordained by God. In fact, this is something that is a theme in Judaism too. Is this idea that your state is ordained and given to you by God? That's the Japanese creation myth. The gods came down from the heavens and created the island of Japan and the Japanese nation, and it's a very common religious belief, is that the nation was created by the gods.
And it's a nationally unifying principle. Like I would say there's probably never been a country really like Japan as far as national unity goes, and it's largely to do with the Shinto values. And just to reiterate here, like we're not talking about picking up Shintoism and just like adopting it and like wearing kimonos and like hanging out with like samurai swords and like having like the crazy roof houses. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about literally, again, taking the principles and like the pieces, like if you break every religion down into like a DNA strand, we're talking about taking those little DNA strands, those pieces that are useful for the specific things we're talking about, and importing them into the white European mindset, because those things used to be there too. That's the other thing, is these things were very European. I would say like, medieval or quote dark age type of Catholicism or Christianity was very much like this in a way. And it didn't stick, obviously, but this is something that we need to bring into our way of thinking, our spiritual way of thinking.
And it's actually very Roman too. I mean, you can draw a lot of comparisons with Roman culture, and the idea that each man is a representation of the house, right? And it's something that even the Anglos did this. I mean, with the house crests and yeah, like this is a common thing. And people want to LARP about like, oh, Japan, homogeneity. Yeah, how do you think they did that, right? Why do you think they have these ideas? It's because it's their innate beliefs to them that the nation and the state and the people are of the gods, and why would you want to let in a bunch of people who are not of the gods, who are not of your group? That's why the Japanese default position on any immigration question is no, right? Because they have a belief that their nation is special, their nation is ordained by the gods, and they don't see the need for other people, even the like GDP arguments are not compelling to them, and they don't listen to them because it's about something deeper to them, right? And so if you're just this kind of like de-identified European or de-identified American, you'll be more, your nation will be more likely to listen to arguments about GDP and economics and everything.
Well, there was an article that was a couple months ago, or maybe it was almost a year ago now. My sense of time is messed up, but I saw this. It was a Jewish person, oh God, arguing that to honor one's ancestors, you should bring in refugees. And like this obviously didn't take in Japan, but listen, when like the international like elites are pulling that move, like you have a successful like philosophical set of values in your society. Like in order to honor one's ancestors, you must bring people in that are not of your ancestors because everyone will love you for it. Like that's basically what the argument was. It's pretty funny.
Oh yeah. No, dude. I mean, people want to insult white Shinto. They don't know what they're getting into. It's a very cogent set of beliefs.
I will wear the kimono though. Like I'll try that. We'll do full Weibo LARPing hours. And I'll start watching anime and everything.
When we get together in March, we got to do that. we got to do that.
All right.
In fact, we should at the thing we're going to. We should do a breakout session on white Shinto.
All right, I'll contact the leaders.
Awesome. A couple more immigration stories here real quick. Haitian immigrant living in Maine faces deportation. Pull out the world's smallest violin for this one. Across the country, this is from WGME.com. Immigration officers are cracking down on refugees with criminal records. In Waterville, the community is rallying around a Haitian refugee facing imminent deportation, leaving a pregnant wife and 2 children behind. It's wrong to be destroying families and breaking up families, said Jennifer Jones, who attended a rally in Waterville Saturday supporting Lexius St. Martin. Now, this guy came to the U.S. with his family in 1994 as a refugee. In 2007, he was arrested on drug charges for trafficking cocaine.
No.
And spent 7 months in jail. And now he's got Eli, guess the weight of his wife here.
Hold on. Okay, so I'm going through the show prep and I like click on the links. I clicked on this and I like literally spilled my coffee because I was laughing so hard at this lady's picture. Again, open the article, look at the picture. If you're looking 300-pound white lady with this Haitian guy with her little kids in the background, and it's hilarious. It's honestly hilarious. And this is the thing, like if you're gonna get with like an illegal immigrant or whatever, like first of all, his status, okay? Second of all, like that if you have kids with him, he's just looking for this basically like anchor baby thing, and in chain migration they'll be able to make him a citizen in a couple years, even if he does get deported. Right. So like once they're of a certain age, they're able to bring family members over or whatever. and he's getting deported right now, but he's going to be able to come right back if chain migration stays. And like, honestly, lady, like, burn the coal, pay the toll. Like, that's what just happened. Like, tough shit. Like, you can go live over with your husbando. Like, if you love him so much and you want your kids to be around him so much, you and your kids should go to Haiti. It's not a shithole. Conan O'Brien told me it's not a shithole. You'll love it. You'll be super rich there. You know, $1 can buy you like a mansion or something over there. You'll be super rich. They'll love you. They'll worship you. They love 300-pound white women. It's their favorite thing. Okay, and you should just go there and you'll be happy. Like, it'll be great. It'll be great. I recommend. I think we should start a GoFundMe for this project to get her there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what these people, like you said, I don't know what these people expect, right? They marry an illegal alien. They marry someone who's not here legally, who has a criminal record, who's a cocaine trafficker, and just expect everything to just go fine. It's like, no. Right? You know, we talk about red flags in a relationship. We all know the red flags, right? You know, always calling her ex-boyfriend, or too many thought pictures on Instagram, or, you know, being a refugee and cocaine trafficker. Like, we all know these things innately are problems that you just want to avoid. Sorry, you know, you picked the wrong guy here, lady. You picked the wrong guy to have your kids, and now he's going back, and you're more than welcome to go with him. In fact, I encourage you to go back with him. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing too. This is their game. This is what they do. They come here and they play Wild West with their degeneracy. They're trying to get kids so that they can come back and be legalized. Like, that's part of the whole game. They're literally coming here trying to get with women for the sole purpose of producing, the right legal moves that you must take to become a citizen themselves. It's insane. But the other thing I want to mention about this story is how rapid the response was for the left-wing activists. I mean, this is one thing that I just so much admire about the left, is that, like, they can immediately activate and have people go and do a rally and, you know, start, you know, blowing at the phone lines of the senators or Congress people in Maine or wherever this was, and actually kind of get things done and get things out in the press and things like that. I really do admire that about them. And I hope that one day, you know, if, you know, a white family is screwed over to somehow, something bad happens to them, you know, or a hospital gets shut down that, you know, disproportionately helps white people and it's just for white families, like, we're able to immediately come to their aid as activists. Like, as far as like my kind of thing goes, like, I do, you know, very much envy that of the left.
Sure. Yeah, no, they're definitely more cohesive, definitely more organized. And yeah, the ability, like, you see this anywhere, something like some story like this happens. Like, all it takes is one news article and boom, dude, there's a rally, there are, you know, flyers, there's everything in place ready to go. And I think a lot of that does, and not to sound like, you know, Alex Jones or something, but a lot of that does come with more national level organization and people who are paid full-time professionals to be identifying stories like this and then facilitating the activism. But still, you know, there's no reason why we can't be doing this at the grassroots level too.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. One last story here. John Kasich, our favorite nationwide food tester, came out and said in a story from Breitbart here that deportation is not my country. In an interview with Open Borders activist and journalist Jorge Ramos, Kasich said immigration and customs enforcement agents were dead wrong for enforcing federal immigration laws by deporting illegal aliens back to their native countries. Ramos asked Kasich if he believed the current 12 to 30 million illegal aliens currently in the U.S. should be allowed to stay permanently. Kasich responded, quote, "I don't think they should be citizens, but I think they should be able to be here, yes, and live in our country. The idea that we would go and try to round them up. And look, these stories where ICE agents are going into people's homes, to me, that's not my country. That's not the way I think we should handle these things. I think it's dead wrong." So John Kasich apparently so motivated by food that he wants all these people to stay.
Yeah, well, listen here, listen to your guy, John Kasich guy. Okay, I'm agreeing with you for the wrong reasons. This is not your country. Your country is a shopping mall. That's what you envision this country as. And real Americans are sick and tired of it. That's the reason this is news, okay? Because we're sick and tired of you treating this like it's your dumping ground for whatever corporation wants to hire cheap Mexican labor in Ohio, okay? So yeah, this isn't your country. Here you go, John. Here you go, buddy. Okay, what's some other countries that are not your countries there? Okay, look. Here's an article right here from Haaretz. Israel starts issuing deportation notices to African asylum seekers. Is that not your country there, John? Are you gonna cry about that? Are you gonna go on and talk about how evil Israel is for deputizing their citizens to help deportation squads? Okay, is that what you're gonna do there, John? No, it's not. You're gonna still support AIPAC? Okay, then shut up, because this is not your country anymore, John. This is our country now. We're taking it back from people like you who want to basically change this country's the face of this country just so you can make a quick buck and that you can leave your kids with a bigger property, a nicer mansion, so you can triple reverse mortgage your home before you die. Like, that's basically what these people are about. And it's sickening. Okay, it's absolutely sickening.
Yeah, no, the whole cheap labor thing is real. I mean, these people are willing to sell out their entire nation and to throw their nation into the garbage bin of history for the sake of a couple extra $1,000s a year from XYZ lobbying company or XYZ corporation that wants free cheap labor. It really is outstanding the level of treason these people are willing to stoop to in order just to make a buck. And I think for most Americans, it's like inconceivable, and that's why so many Americans are not receptive to the idea that these people are betraying them, because it is not within their moral constitution. They can't morally justify selling out their country for a couple shekels. But for these politicians and the political class, they absolutely can. And so many Americans just don't believe that their politicians would be this dishonest and be this treasonous towards their country. But unfortunately, they are. Unfortunately, these people are willing to betray Americans for some extra bucks. Speaking
of treason, I mean, just tie it back to the very beginning here. Did you see John Kasich's take on the memo?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God. He basically went further left than any Democrat I saw. The manner in which this was done was wrong and it does a disservice to our country. My full statement. The FBI and Department of Justice are important to our country. While we must maintain oversight of these institutions, it has to be done in a bipartisan manner, not for partisan reasons or political gain. Oh, you mean using the intelligence services for campaign research and using them as your own little Democratic Party apparatus?
Yeah, using the FBI to go after Trump and discredit the president through this fake Mueller investigation. Yeah, partisan goals like that, John.
Yeah. So
not like that. That's okay.
It is very serious when foreign power engages in sophisticated efforts to impact not just our elections, but our elections throughout the world.
I agree, John.
I agree.
I completely agree, John.
Yes, concur. Russia is not an ally. They are not our friends, and they shouldn't be treated as such. The independent investigation into Russia's meddling in our election must continue unimpeded by outside forces from either Congress or the president. You know what, dude? This guy has got to go. If you are in Ohio, we need a Paul Nealon type candidate to run against John Kasich. At this point,
he's out. He's getting term limited. Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, a Democrat would be further to the right than John Kasich, on all the right issues. This is insane. I can't imagine cucking that hard on this memo. It's one thing to cry about it for whatever reason, but he's going full to the left of most of the Democrats. He's going to the left of MSNBC.
Yeah. Fellow Republican indeed. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the midterms and stuff coming up here in the second segment here. We'll come back with the diversity report, talk about the midterms, Paul Nealon going on a very interesting podcast, and then we'll talk to Eli about identitarian activism and what he has planned for this next month and the year ahead in terms of Operation Homeland and everything else. We're doing all that and more when we come back here at Nationalist Review. Don't go away. Hour 2 of Nationalist Review. If you have not already, head on over to patreon.com/AmericaFirstMedia and get behind the old paywall there. Just $7 a month gets you access to all kinds of special perks and rewards and helps you be a part of what we're doing here. We do appreciate it. We would not be able to do this without all of your guys' support out there, so we do appreciate that, of course. we're doing this show, we're doing my show, which is we're trying to do my show every day. Of course, stuff comes up, topics come up. I got to do videos, all that. You know how it is, and it helps us keep the website going too. So head on over to patreon.com/AmericaFirstMedia to help out fund the show. We do appreciate it. All your donations are appreciated. So coming back here again, Eli Mosley here for hour 2. We have Eli. I don't know if you've listened to the show since we've added this segment, but we have a special segment called Diversity Report 2049: A Look at America's White Minority Future, where we highlight, and for those of you who are now new audience members, we highlight a case of cultural enrichment every week here in the program. And
sounds based.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it really helps me come to terms with the fact that we're going to be a minority in our own country in 2050, and it just makes me look forward to it even more. Just kidding. We're not going to be a minority. Not going to happen.
Did you see the that video with the lady who's basically admitting it's part of a plan and the whole thing? They played the audio at the end of Fashion Nation this last week. It's hilarious. Yeah, the actual video. You seen that?
I think I know what you did. Last week or this week?
Oh, maybe it was from last week. I'm not sure. The newest episode that just came out yesterday is when they played the audio of this woman who's like, whites are going to be a minority in this country, and white supremacists are very aware of this fact, and it's just part of the plan. We got to move forward.
Have not listened. I've actually dedicated myself to not listening to FTN until I do my show on the weekend, because I don't want to unconsciously copy a narrative or something.
Okay. Yeah. You gotta listen to the newest episode then. It's at the very end. The audio clip's fantastic.
Nice. So anyways, this week's story of cultural enrichment is it's from Breitbart.com. A 5-year-old burned alive in a voodoo ritual. So a 5-year-old little girl has been burned and permanently disfigured after she was subjected to a voodoo ritual. Fire blown over her face and cuts to her body were intended to banish the demon that her mother believed made her misbehave. The children, this is a quote from a police detective, says, the mother stated that her children have been behaving badly due to evil spirits, and that they perform prayers and use certain waters and oils to make the demon leave. The Massachusetts publication reported that the mother is of Haitian descent and, quote, believes in the religion of voodoo, which originated in Haiti in the 18th century and is centered around the worship of spirits, end quote. The children's mother asked 2 women to perform the ritual, police officials said. The sisters who performed the ritual tied up the little girl and subjected her to this treatment, also allegedly threatened to cut off her 8-year-old brother's head with a machete. A police report said that one of them held a long stick to his throat, making it hard for him to breathe. So, hey man, look, this is the third world behavior we're importing, and frankly, if you are opposed to this, then you are a white supremacist evil bigot.
Yeah. Do you have the other voodoo story of the week on this little bit here?
I don't. I didn't know there's another one.
There's another voodoo story of the week here, where an 18-year-old Italian girl was cut up into multiple parts, put into 2 suitcases, and a radical white supremacist took it into his own hands. I do not condone, and went and I guess gunned down or ran over a few migrants as revenge. Basically, a lot like this story, it was, I guess, some type of Nigerian, drug lord or whatever, right, who believed in voodoo and cut this, 18-year-old Italian girl who was, gorgeous into pieces to appease his voodoo gods. I just can't wait for the official Church of Voodoo to say it's racist to not allow them to cut up white people or young children to appease their religious practices. We do have freedom of religion, so they should be allowed to, right?
Absolutely. No, religion has to be equal in the U.S., and they deserve equal rights to practice their religion, no matter how horrific or murderous it is.
Yeah. The World War II, in World War II, they literally fought for the idea that one day, Nigerian and Haitian voodoo doctors or witch doctors would be able to cut young children up into pieces in order to practice their freedom of religion. Right. When the founding fathers wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, their intention was for witch doctors and voodoo people to cut people up, behead people and things like that. That's what they wanted, They believed in extreme individual rights.
Yeah, no, my great-grandfather flew a plane and got shot down over the Pacific, fighting for the belief that these people deserved to be in this country and deserved to practice their religion here. No, it's horrific. And the story in Italy was especially disheartening because, look, obviously, I don't endorse violence. We don't endorse or condone acts of violence, but look, the New York Times, in the previous hour, they ran a story where they admit that diversity and proximity to one another causes a lack of social cohesion, and it leads to people acting out like this. It leads to strife between groups, and ultimately, unfortunately, that strife leads to violence and retributive violence, right? When the migrant population commits an act of violence and the concerns of the native population are not being listened to by the state, people are going to take actions into their own hands, and I wish that it didn't have to be this way, and I wish that it wasn't this way, and I wish everybody could get along, but we know that just isn't true, and that just can't work out. So the peaceful solution here, the best solution for all parties involved, if we want less violence and less conflict, is for these people who have immigrated to European countries, who have come to European countries as refugees, to go back. Where they won't have to be concerned with violence from scary nationalists, and where Italian 18-year-old girls won't have to be worried about walking down the street at night, worrying about being chopped up into little pieces by some 65 IQ African. Like, the peaceful solution for everybody here is for them to go back, for Italy to be Italy, for Nigeria to be Nigeria. And it is absurd that we are the ones treated as radicals. We're treated as insane or evil people for proposing this very basic idea.
Yeah, well, the other thing that's insane about it too is they think that the guy who did this is somehow worse than the Nigerian or the voodoo witch doctor or whatever. Like that is just. That's absolutely insane. And while those people who were those migrants or whatever that were harmed, like they're fundamentally like, invading the natural law of things. And these things are just going to happen when you have these people coming into countries that they don't belong in. Like, frankly, the who's at fault for both or for all these killings is the neoliberal, like, international elite who's bringing them in for their own purposes and staying in their gated estates. You know what I mean? This is not good for working class people from either side.
Right. Yeah, no, so, those refugees aren't better off being in Europe getting run over or killed by an Italian nationalist. They would still be alive had they been left in their home country. And likewise, that 18-year-old Italian girl would still be alive if the other migrants had never come to her country. Like, these people, this would not have happened if it weren't for the mass importation of refugees and non-Europeans into Europe. And we see example after example of this type of thing happening, and we're over here proposing the sensible solution that, hey, maybe these people shouldn't be there, but no, we can't entertain that because that is evil.
The far right parties in Italy are very, I guess you could say, their optics are would not fly here in America, let alone I'm surprised they even work over there in Italy. And they're getting ramped up and angry, and it makes sense. So, I mean, the backlash to this, what do migrants and what do non-whites do a lot of times when this stuff happens to them? They chimp out, they freak out, they riot, they burn things, they attack people. But what do white people do when this stuff happens? Generally speaking, is politically organize. And that's what it looks like it's happening over in Italy. I don't know if you've seen any of their rallies over there, but I encourage you guys to check out some of their rallies.
Bringing back certain open palm esoteric salutes, from what I understand.
Right. Well, I mean, my take on it is like, no foreign group is going to determine the angle at which my arm moves. It's just, the founding fathers put this country together in order so that we can have our arm at whatever angle we want.
Right. I think that was the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights. Yeah. No, well, it's funny because actually, Roman salute, like it originates from Rome. In fact, the American, and God, I mean, I can only wait till Jared Holt, that little twig, cuts this part out of context and defending your Roman salute. What was the salute called? I can't stand that guy. The open palm. It was how they did the Pledge of Allegiance in America up until the 1940s.
The Bellamy salute, was it called? Bellamy, not Bellamy. Maybe actually, hold on. The West, it's called the Bellamy salute.
The West Bellamy's ungrateful salute.
Yeah, the West Bellamy salute is what it was called. No, here I'll send you the link.
I saw certain other West Bellamy salutes in Charlottesville. And,
it was. I mean, it's called the Bellamy salute. I mean, that's what it was called.
Oh, it is. Oh, look.
That face when memes come together in perfect synchronicity.
I know that I salute West Bellamy. I don't know about you, but
yeah. That's actually been the thing at the little club we've got out here in DC has been the appropriation of the Bellamy open hand hello with the term racial greetings is how we greet each other, and it's just a friendly hello. It's a good appropriation.
Symbols change, man. But it is funny because that symbol was used in European cultures for hundreds, if not thousands of years, originating, of course, in Rome with the Bellamy open palm salute, and got stigmatized very well in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And it's not now it's a fireable offense to use that salute. It's kind of funny how things like that change.
It's a jailable offense in some countries, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it is. It is in fact, most European countries it is a jailable offense. It's funny. Anyways, so let's talk briefly about the midterms. Let's get all real politic here. The congressional ballot is looking better for Republicans, and I don't bring this up just to shill for Republican Party politics or to do some kind of like alt-right GOP vassal type thing, but we need to remember that if Trump were to lose the House of Representatives, we would not be talking about like ramping up deportations or about ideal immigration policy. We'd be talking about impeachment, and we'd have a lame duck president for the next 4 years. And as flawed as Trump is on some issues, I think we can all agree it's probably better to have him in office making some changes that push things in our direction than having Nancy Pelosi leading the charge on what's it called, impeachment of the president. So we don't bring this up just to like shill for Republicans, but to just to highlight the fact that nothing's going to get done if we don't have a good president. So basically the GOP generic ballot, GOP versus Democrat generic congressional ballot, is swinging rapidly in the direction of the Republican Party, and this is due largely to tax reform, due to the improving economic circumstances, and frankly, independents are not going to object to the rest of Trump's agenda if the economy is doing well. I mean, like we think that so many people are obsessed with politics, but the vast majority of Americans just want to see a good report from their retirement portfolio, and they want to see the economy moving in the right direction. And I think that causing so much good economic growth and passing the tax reform bill, for example, which is going to lead to people bringing home more money ahead of 2018. You're going to see people not really concerned about Trump deporting Dreamers or Trump sending back DACA illegals if they're fat and happy with good paychecks. So we didn't support Trump for the tax reform aspect of things, but it's turning out to work in our favor, I think.
Yeah, I hope it does. I mean, my biggest issue with this is that I think that the economy is going to correct itself, let's say, very harshly regardless. The people who control the markets, they don't like Trump, and they are, I believe, are going to hit him hard in the 2020 election to try to hurt his chances at winning. I mean, they're just going to pile on a lot of stuff with this. And the markets are going to really hurt him. So it's good for the 2018 midterms for sure. But I think he's going to be, or the economy might be in some trouble coming up for the 2020, around 2020, 2019 area. So right. I do worry about that pretty big.
Yeah, no, that is obviously always a concern, is the stock market and animal spirits and those people who are the big players in the stock market. It's very easy to engineer economic statistics and engineer a crash to work in the in the direction that you want if you're the ones controlling the stock market. So that's always a concern, and I would anticipate that would be done ahead of 2020 to make things harder for Trump. But at the same time, I'm not certain if there's enough cohesion there to bring that all together, because there would be a lot of players, a lot of different moving parts involved in order to cause a crash of that magnitude. So I don't know. I think
the issue is that I believe it's 1/3 of U.S. assets, or something around 1/3, maybe a little less than that, that's tied up right now in the student loan market, right? So these basically these federally guaranteed loans, and what they started doing with those loans recently, in the last couple of years, is doing exactly what they did in the 2008 housing crisis lead up, where they packaged together some of these less desirable loans, people defaulting on these loans and things like that, and they're packaging them together and trading them on Wall Street. So I think that's kind of where it comes from. I've said this on a couple of podcasts. I've said this on a couple of places, and I think that's kind of the source of it, mainly because it's going to really help. I mean, obviously, just the whole idea that is obvious, right? Like, if you're going to be doing that, speculation in those types of loans, it's a very volatile market, first of all. Second of all, just like the housing issue, the housing crisis, it's based off of diversity. I mean, the 2008 housing crisis cannot be said enough is the fault of diversity loans, is essentially what it comes down to.
Exactly.
And these are going to be diversity loans again, but for schools.
Right.
And then the other thing is that it really plays to a good kind of, Democrat kind of ticket where they run on my free college to fix this issue kind of thing. Which, I mean, obviously we know that that's not going to help, and it's certainly not going to work. But that's a very big thing on their young side of their party right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know anyone who's our age who's left of Hillary Clinton who's not begging for free college, and in reality they're just begging for they don't want to pay these hundreds of dollars of loans. Is essentially what it comes down to. To be
fair though, I think that should be our issue. I think we should be playing in that field, because there are a lot of people who went to college going to get a STEM degree, right? Going to get a good degree in software engineering, who are now getting out of college and wages have flatlined. They can't get a job. They don't want to work for $60,000 a year because they live in Seattle or some other area like this where they simply can't afford to live anymore because the wages have been driven down by H-1B visas, etc. And so I can understand that angst, and I can understand the anger from people who did what they were supposed to, right? They went to college. Our generation was the first generation that was told that everybody has to go to college. You think of our parents' generation, something like only 30% of students back in the day were going to college because it was only for people with specified job needs that you would need to go get a college degree.
Now they're trying to pass laws to mandate that you have to apply to colleges.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I didn't see that, but I do. Nothing surprises me anymore. And frankly, so I just graduated this past year with a political science degree, and I could have learned everything that I needed for my degree in a 2-year program. And frankly, I could have learned most of it just by reading and doing my own research independently. So my degree was not exactly the most worthwhile. And that's for political science, which is a precursor to a law degree, right? I can only imagine the people who are getting gender studies, women's studies degrees, how worthless their studies are.
Yeah, they're doing it in 5 or 6 years too. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. And so look, I can understand the need and the desire to pass some kind of free college measure and to pay back these loans or loan forgiveness, but only for people with degrees in certain fields. Okay, so a lot of the left-wing agitators for free college, you look at them and you can ask them, okay, what's your major? It's ethnic studies. Oh, it's gender studies. It's okay, that's not something I want to be paying for, right? Taxpayers should not be paying for you to read Ta-Nehisi Coates books and do arts and crafts and worship Sean King, right? I don't want to pay for that. But if you have a biochem degree or something, yeah, for the good of society, I think we could have that conversation. Now, this is a whole bigger issue, right? We have too many colleges. We have too many people going to college. And so because of those limitations, I don't think we could really get into this. But but
Well,
we
I think
could really pursue this. But
yeah, no, I agree. I think part of it, when you talk to people our age, like basically what I've always tried to do is explain to them why they can't have those things and why they're forced to pay these loans. I mean, they're basically subsidizing non-whites, just like a lot of things. It's like the continuation of the white tax farm is very apparent in the student loan kind of market or whatever,
Sure.
and the college industrial complex. And that's kind of what I've always used. Now, as far as policy goes, yeah, maybe there's something there that we can latch onto. But I think like one of the things that I've always done is just talk to them, talk to people our age about, why is it that you're paying out the nose? And it's because we're paying for free college for illegal immigrants. We're paying for college for the purpose of diversity quotas and affirmative action. You know what I mean? And we're paying for people to be indoctrinated in esoteric Sean Kingism. And it's like this is the reason that you're not able to afford that. You can barely afford rent. You can barely afford to take a girl out to dinner. You can barely afford to get a car that's not 20 years old or whatever. So that's kind of always been like a talking point I've used for those folks that are our age that are really hurting with this stuff.
And the red pill, the brutal red pill to take on the housing crash was that the reason so many subprime loans existed was because of years of government programs designed to get minorities into houses. And I don't even say that in a way that I'm inventing that. Like explicitly, these programs said our goal is to get minorities to own homes. And it just so happened, of course, I mean, we know socioeconomics. We know these two things are tracked, race and economic standing. There's a correlation there. And so a large amount of these people that were getting into houses were working jobs where they couldn't afford these homes. And so when the government benefits ran out, they were stuck with these houses they had no way of paying for, no way of paying the mortgage on. And what do you know? Mass defaults and mass defaulting on mortgages. And dude, it's funny. I'm actually... not to get too much into it, but doing a lot of looking into the real estate market. And you can see, dude, all of these defaults happened in like 2007. You can look at the house, go on like Zillow or something, look at the sale history.
We've never recovered from that. We never recovered from that.
Right. Yeah, no, the numbers, even out here in Washington, where we didn't quite bubble so hard as places like California and Florida, we're still selling for under '07 levels, just because of how inflated the market was by federal Gibbs.
Yeah. And a lot of people bought property as an investments, and they lost the entirety of their investment because of this. And like, we never recovered. Another thing I think, and maybe I don't know what it's like out in Washington or where you're from, but maybe you're familiar with this. But the other thing is a lot of like rural or suburban or like places out in the middle of sort of nowhere, other than the college, replace their manufacturing industries, replace their real production value, their real GDP, with basically turning themselves into college towns, and run an entire economy off of being a college town. Just some places that come to mind for me is like Shippensburg State College, obviously, is one of them. Millersville, Kutztown, like these are places around where I'm from, where the entire economy of the town is based around college, when it used to be based around lumber mills or iron or steel or coal or whatever it was.
Sure.
And it's sort of alleviated some of that pain, some of that economic pain, because some people obviously still were able to have money and the economy's there. And then once this crash happens, a lot of these schools are going to go out of business. Let's just be very clear here. A lot of schools are going to go out of business or be very hurting. And those towns are finally going to get the crash or the economic disparity that they would have gotten, 20, 30 years ago, or when NAFTA first started affecting the economy. So I think that a lot of these kind of college subsidies have been, in a way, trying to alleviate that pain, or have been alleviating of that pain, and it's going to catch up real quick when this next bubble bursts or whatever, I guess you could say, regardless of what happens.
Right. Yeah, regardless of the reason for the bubble bursting, it's going to burst at some point. Yeah, we simply don't need all of these people going to college that we have now. And I'm not making this argument from like an Ayn Randian or Paul Ryan type of, as the column earlier pointed out, replacement fantasy. we simply don't have a demand for 100,000 gender studies majors or 100,000 music history majors. Like there just is no market for these things. These people are getting expensive degrees in, and
there's no reason like 105 IQ, 110 IQ guy needs to go to school for like history or politics or gender studies, even, or like any even normal stuff like, you know, criminology or whatever the hell. Like there's just no reason for it. Like it's very inefficient way of teaching people, and it really is just a subsidy towards this kind of brainwashing. It's pretty sick, honestly.
Yeah, and like an adult daycare program. Like, dude, I was taking a lot of classes with people, like kind of like general ed classes with people who had no business being in college. You know, and I was going to a state school, and so, you know, we're obviously not getting the cream of the crop, but man, a lot of kids at that school just like did not need to be in college. And my freshman year, we had a group of like 15 of us that were all you know, friends, and by the end of my freshman first year, I think 13 out of the 15 had either dropped out or transferred to a different state school, just because either what they were taking wasn't worth it. Like I had one guy who just showed up for a semester just to like party, and then he went back to where he came from and like got a job in an auto shop, and that's like what he liked to do, and he was doing really well at it. So like too many people feel the pressure in our school system to go to college, when in reality they'd be happier, better off, and making a lot more money learning a trade. Dude, learn how to weld, learn how to be a pipe fitter, learn how to like do something practical that you can make a lot of money doing.
Yeah, the other thing is people that are into our politics or our movement who are young, if you're a young guy, like you're 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're looking to what to do, like getting into one of these trades is a lot more secure if you think about like doxing and all this other stuff than it is in the white collar job. Yeah. Like I never finished my college degree, but I worked in I was an HR manager, if you didn't know that. And that's a job that usually people with college degrees have. And I was immediately able to be fired. You know what I mean? That was like the most unstable job I could have had. You know what I mean? As soon as I'm getting doxxed, I'm getting fired. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But if I was like a welder or a mechanic or something like that, like there's other places I could have gone to work. And there's also a good chance that your boss is going to have, your same views or is not going to care. Right. And then there's also the chance you could just go start your own thing. You know what I mean? So the idea of like that these types of jobs are good for people in our movement where they're HR managers or, computer programmers, or they're working in these corporate jobs where, the kind of neoliberal mainstream view of social politics is just as present in corporations as it is at these universities. Is laughable. I think that, if you are, a young guy and you have our views, unless you're going to become a lawyer, which is another kind of role we need, obviously, I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not a good idea to go to school for something else.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I can say this as someone who has a college degree. Like I don't know how much this is going to benefit me, but it's certainly not going to benefit me as much as people like when I was in high school told me it would. And I mean, obviously, like I've chosen to go down a career path that is, more self-starter, not working for anybody. But yeah, dude, even the people who I know who graduated with degrees, like they don't know what they're going to do. And the thing is, a lot of these jobs that are used to be thought of as prestigious or whatever, they can be outsourced. Computer programming, you're a STEM guy, you're an engineer, okay, you're going to be training your replacements in India, unfortunately, until we turn that around and make that not happen. But the jobs that can't be outsourced, ironically, are things like law, which can't be outsourced. But then again, dude, law school is a massive.
Oh, you're wrong about that. Let me just red pill you on the Pajit legal advisor industry here. Like, holy shit! I've become very much acquainted with this idea. Basically, like they have like a bunch of like 30 guys that have like law degrees from God knows where or in America, and you call in. It's like, hello, how may I help you? Can I help your legal troubles today? And it's like. They're paying them probably like pennies on the hour to basically give like legal advice and be able to sign off on legal documents. It's pretty funny, honestly, but even that is able to be outsourced at this point.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, the whole stigma of a lawyer being a good job originated in the 50s and 60s when there were like 15 law schools in the whole country. Now there are over 300 ABA accredited law schools. And the demand for lawyers has not increased by, 1,000%, 3,000%. So again, supply and demand. You can go to University of Houston Law School, for example, but you're much less likely to make it as a lawyer than you would be back in the 50s or 60s, because anybody can get a law degree. Like, it used to be a job where you have to be like 140 IQ plus, but now, you are like 100 IQ or you're a diversity hire. Great. Welcome to law school. Welcome to getting your JD for cheap. So it's kind of a joke, and not worth it anymore, unfortunately. That's what I planned on going to college for. I came to college planning on
that's originally what I was going to go to school for as well. I was in a 6-year degree program to get to go through law school and all that stuff fast, and it ended up not working out. So that's what I was going to do too. Yeah, not worth it. All right, let's talk a little more midterm news here. So our favorite source, forward.com, has an article about Paul Nealon and the doctor, David Duke. This was a surreal read here. I got a bunch of criticism back after Charlottesville for having David Duke appeared in a frame of my video, and people were like, he was like making friends with David Duke, and I was like, okay, like he was in like a frame of my live stream. And I don't know, we don't want to get into the whole weeds on that, but people just, did he give you
Hitler?
Hold on, did he give you lifting and dietary advice is the question. Did he red pill you on fasting and broccoli is the question, because that's how you're real friends.
He did not, but apparently people got doxxed. People got doxxed and fired based on that picture, the like muscle picture they took with him, the one with Enoch in the background. Like a couple of those guys got like in serious trouble.
Yeah, you can't take a picture with David Duke without losing your entire life, obviously. Because by taking a picture with him, you then condone every single thing he's done in an organization he used to be a part of, did for the last 200 years or whatever.
Well, apparently, according to Forward, you can't even do an interview with the guy. You can't even talk to the guy without being, the second coming of the great Satan. So, this is from forward.com. Paul Nealon made an appearance on the podcast show of David Duke, former KKK Grand Wizard and prominent white supremacist and anti-Semite. They checked all 3 boxes there. Nealon is challenging House Speaker Paul Ryan in Wisconsin's upcoming Republican primary. In the interview, Duke asked Nealon about Jews in the media and about white nationalism. Quote, "I think it's right and righteous to do that," Nealon said in response to a question about preserving the U.S.'s white majority. "I think that we, white people, have built wonderful civilizations in Northern Europe and across the world." Mediterranean's BTFO. And if it weren't for our leadership, many more people would have died over the course of history. In a response to a question from Duke about Nealon's repudiation by Breitbart News, Nealon said, "Well, it reveals to me that, in fact, Jews control the media. So, Bannon disavowed me."
Where's the lie?
This is the interesting thing. Bannon disavowed me, Breitbart disavowed me, and Breitbart is run largely by Jewish folks, he added, and they took down all my writings at Breitbart. So, the interesting thing here is this is the full article from Forward. Okay, there's no commentary on this, right? There's no repudiation.
No, they never do that. They don't. As a longtime Forward reader, they usually don't do that.
Right. The author here, Ari Feldman, he doesn't prove Paul Nealon wrong. He doesn't offer any rebuttal to what Nealon's saying. They just print this. And that makes you think, like, why is that? Why don't they try to disprove this?
They expect you to read it and go, "Oh God, oh my God," and just like wow, I can't even, is basically what happens. I've been reading the Forward. I don't know, you probably know this or maybe you don't, but for your listeners as well, I literally got red pilled on the JQ via reading Haaretz and Jewish Daily Forward. That's what I did. When I'm asked, "Oh, where did you hear this hateful rhetoric from?" It's like, I just believe and talk about and understand them as they write about themselves. That's it. Or that's how I got into this anyway. They usually do that, where they kind of just present the facts, and part of it is because they know their readership, their ideological values are vehemently pro Jewish, and there are a lot of people in the media who write for other publications who read their stuff, right? So they're really just trying to get people the ability to just read the facts of what's going on, so that they can go to their kind of op-ed areas or their semi-op-ed areas of their publications and kvetch. Sure. But one of the lines or one of these parts, he said, to break this down, he says, I think it's right and righteous to preserve, the white people have built wonderful civilizations, things like that. This is what normal Americans believe. I mean, they've done polls on this, and I would say this. I would say even non-white Americans to some degree. I mean, look, I think it was like 39% of Americans believe that we should preserve America's white culture and history. 39%. That there's some base black guys and Hispanics in that 39% apparently, because I don't believe 39% of white people believe that. So, like, this idea that this is not a normal thought is insane. This is normal. This was normal for a long time. And if it wasn't for the extreme brainwashing and gaslighting, this is what normal white people today would believe as well. Nearly all of them. So, and also the fact is, like, what that reveals to me, the fact that Jews control the media. Where's the lie? I mean, like, look, you don't have to have my ideology to understand Jewish control the media. I mean, a normie can understand this. Normies know. They're just afraid to talk about it. And is pointing this out. If pointing this out as anti-Semitic, then I guess Laura Loomer is the most anti-Semitic Jew out there, because she has confirmed this on her Twitter feed. The Jewish controlled media. I mean, the Jews themselves brag about this in their publications. Again, I read their publications. This is where I get a lot of information from. And I'm telling you right now, they talk about Jewish controlled media themselves. They brag about it. And the fact that Paul Nealon is willing to put himself out on the line and bring it up and talk about it as a real issue freaks them out. It freaks them out. And it just shows the concept of just calling, just pointing out that they're Jewish causes them to freak the hell out. And what's wrong there? What's wrong there, Rabbi? Like, are you why are you not proud of being Jewish? Like, I don't understand.
One of the funny things for me was with Ben Shapiro, where Ben Shapiro freaks out about Paul Nealon making the list of his critics. And again, Nealon was making a list of people who criticized him. He listed all the verified Twitter users who had attacked him, and it, again, just so happens 74 out of 81 were Jewish. And Ben Shapiro freaking out about the lists and this whole thing. It scares him. Just like 2 weeks earlier, Ben Shapiro had made a list of people he considered alt-right and published that on his Twitter. So it's like, where's the consistency?
Meanwhile, half of them weren't even alt-right. Like, you say what you will about, Paul's list of Jews. Like, the people that he was naming were not, some of them weren't even alt-right.
Yeah, didn't he post like Vox Day? It's like, okay, bro.
Yeah,
sure.
And he put like Ann Coulter. It's like, okay, maybe. I guess that was actually probably an accurate one. But he's putting like VDare and things like that. Like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. The other thing too here is, look, they are constantly going off on how white men control everything. Oh, white men control corporations. Oh, white men control this. White men control that. Yeah. I don't understand. Like, well, I do understand, but the idea that we shouldn't be able to do the exact same thing is insane. And Paul is doing a great job of pointing out this hypocrisy. I mean, Enoch talks about this, where he says, white people hate hypocrisy, and this is very, very true. And I think that he's doing a great job at pointing out this hypocrisy. Right. So yeah.
Well, the other thing about this too is that, like, I think if Forward were to try to argue with Nealon and say that Nealon's wrong on this, they would be forced to play their true hand here. They would be forced to say that it is wrong to try to protect America's majority. It is wrong to believe that white people have built wonderful civilizations in Northern Europe and around the world. Like, they would have to actually say what they think here. And so I think this is very good framing by Nealon to say things this way, because it's going to force the enemy to reveal their true agenda, their true plan, and what their true motivations are. And look,
that's why they don't like it.
Right. That's why it freaks them out so much. And when Nealon says, well, quote, Jews control the media, they have to then argue that they don't, and that would force them to actually argue about the statistics of who makes up the majority of media boards and executive positions and everything. And again, I don't think that's a conversation they want to have, because that might reveal a little bit too much about the demographics of media ownership in America. So. Yeah, for sure. They simply can't respond to this.
Right. Well, did you watch the interview with John Cardillo from Rebel Media with Nealon?
I did not.
So basically, this guy was a former, Paul Nealon supporter. He's a rebel tier guy, like, works for Ezra Levant, and he's pissed at Paul Nealon rather. And he has him on his show to do a long interview, about an hour long or 50 minutes long or something like that. And he, Paul Nehlen recorded his own version of it and eternally BTFOs the guy on multiple occasions. Points out his hypocrisy. He did a really good job. But the first thing I watched was what John Cardillo put up. And what did he put up? He puts up the segment that's about 9 minutes long of him basically grilling Paul Nehlen on David Duke. And he's complaining about David Duke. And he's like, oh, you went on David Duke's show. And he's just really angry about it. And it's like, listen there, guy. You're a rebel media guy, right? So you support Donald Trump. You are doing to Paul Nehlen what the media did to Donald Trump. And don't you see the hypocrisy of complaining about Jewish-controlled media while working for Ezra Levant, who might be one of the most stereotypical, according to my sources of Laura Loomer.
Yeah, listen to the Laura Loomer Baked Alaska stream. Like, that was very illuminating.
Yeah, and so according to his fellow Jewish person, he's like the epitome of the typical tricks. And I just think that this idea that, well, anyway, hold on. He put this up, right? So John Cardillo puts this up, and he just puts that piece up, and then Paul Nehlen puts out the full interview, and he's crying about it online, like, "Oh, this is so dishonest." Blah 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 blah. Right. Now, I will say this: some small critiques for Paul Nehlen. First of all, I would say if you're gonna go on David Duke's podcast, you got to talk about fasting and broccoli. It's very important. His dieting advice is fantastic. Also, if you're going to argue about the David Duke question, which is something that is going to follow him now everywhere he does an interview, which again, he should always promote the idea that he does interviews with anybody, but he should always be on the attack. Okay, there's never a reason to kind of like argue within this frame. I mean, John Cardillo or whatever his name is, he's basically bringing up like, oh, are you aware that in the 90s David Duke got charged with stealing money from campaign donors to go gamble and all this stuff? It's like, dude, I did an interview on his show. I don't have to answer for everything he's ever done. Right. I'm on your show, and I'm sure there's things that you've done that I disagree with. And the idea that I have to answer for all those things is ridiculous. You should always go on the attack when it comes to this, is what I would say to Paul Nehlen.
Of course.
You should never just kind of sit in their frame and argue the details. Accuse him like you're doing the same thing that the leftist media did to Trump with David Duke, and then you wonder why I say you're controlled by the same group of people. Like, you're proving my point for me. And then the other thing I would say is that when you record an interview, just download OBS. Like, come on, don't go full boomer. I think he recorded it on like a cell phone, so you can barely hear the other guy talking. But the idea of recording interviews is something that Jared Taylor and Richard do. So I would definitely keep up that practice as well for Paul Nehlen. So, right. Yeah, the whole thing has been very, very interesting on how they deal with it.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. I did an interview with Ali Stuckey of, I think, The Blaze or whatever, and her whole piece was exposing alt-right language, and so they interviewed me, and because I don't self-identify using that term all the time, or I don't self-identify using that term, and she was like, "Oh, this is the revealing truth about how they use language to actually signify." It's some whole bullshit thing where they caught me using the word like heritage and like history and like nation, and they're like, "Oh, this is actually scary code for this or that," and so they thought they did this big like BTFO expose piece. But I told her going into it, I'm like, "Look, if I do this interview, I'm going to record the whole thing," and I don't think her producers like signed off on that, but she said, "Oh yeah, that's fine, that's okay." And so it's okay, cool. So I recorded the whole thing, and I told her, I'm like, "Look, if you just publish a short version of this and you cut my statements out of context," which is of course what they did, "then I will publish the whole thing." Yeah. And she eventually said, "Okay, fine." So they ended up publishing the whole interview. And of course, their whole like scary gotcha, like out of context thing totally falls apart, because I think the full version of the interview ended up getting more views than the clipped one did. And the comments, even from like their own like usually boomer audience, were like, "Yeah, like what's like literally where's the problem with any of this? Like
what's going on there, big guy at the Blaze?" Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't talked too much about this a little bit, but like the New York Times is doing this piece on me. It was supposed to be like 5 minutes long, and then they end up being embedded with us for several activist events, Charlottesville 3, Gainesville, and things like that. And I recorded my own versions of like 3 interviews, I think, with them, but I ended up doing quite more than was intended. So I am a little skeptical about how that's going to turn out. But I've since I started kind of talking to media people and things like that, I've been red pill on the fact that you must record everything. So
Yep.
I'm gonna make sure. I would recommend anyone who's going to talk to the media, which I don't recommend doing unless you're like, classically trained alt-right talking points or whatever. But if you're going to do it, you should definitely record your end so you can put it up on the internet. And I'm saying that as someone who originally didn't do that. And then rapidly has become red pilled to it.
Yeah, if you're just some guy,
experience.
dude, if you're just some guy, don't talk to the media, because there was some guy a while ago, a couple months ago, who's going around and saying, "Oh, I'm and thankfully nobody fell for this because it was so transparent. And he came out with exactly what he was doing. He said, "Oh, I'm interviewing people who were in Charlottesville or supported Charlottesville, and seeing what the reaction from their personal relationships has been." It's like, okay, dude, like, no, we're not doing that. Because what they want to do is they want to isolate individuals and separate them from their family. What they're going to do, if anybody comes to you and you're just some guy who was at a rally or at some event or, was on social media saying something, what they're going to do is they're going to talk to you to get your comments. Then they're going to go talk to your parents. They're going to talk to your siblings. They're going to talk to your boss.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to destroy your life over this thing.
I went through this and it was awful. I haven't really talked too much about it. I'm not going to talk too much about it here, but like I've went through this and I'm telling you guys right now, like you don't want that. You don't want that. It's not worth it. It's definitely not worth it. And it's something that you should definitely not do. I actually had a lot of reporters reaching out to me and they're like, "Oh, you're Eli Mosley. Do you know anybody who's like, lesser known that we could talk to?" And I'm like, "No. What do you think I'm going to do? Just like feed you like people who otherwise would never get doxxed?"
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's what they do. They go right for your family. They really do. I mean, like,
yeah, I had reporters. I had reporters the day after Charlottesville. I had reporters at my house. Not at my house. At my family home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, scumbag. And, a few very stern phone calls later, they were made aware of the fact they were not to go back there. So, yeah. These people are scumbags. Anyways, speaking of activism, let's pivot here real quick and talk about Operation Homeland. You mentioned this at the start of the program, and I think a lot of people knew you as being the CEO of Identity Europa, but you've moved on from that and you're now involved with Operation Homeland. So what is the objective? What are the goals of this new group? What is the group, first of all? Is it an organization or what are the specifics? What's the general view of Operation Homeland?
So, I mean, this is something that you'd probably be familiar with, and our way to frame it is that we want to be a lot kind of like a leadership institute for the alt-right, in that we're going to be training activists on how to put on events, organize events, how to do literally like manuals and things like that, and videos on how to do everything from a banner drop and a poster to a rally and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, we want to push down the information that we've learned over the last year and that we continue to learn on to the movement as a whole. Because what's happening right now is everyone's so decentralized that people are all learning from the same mistakes over and over and over again. And none of this is really permeating through the movement as a whole. And this is something that's international as well, right? So we're in contact with our brothers over in France and Germany and Austria and Scandinavia and in Italy and things like that. We're and the UK and Ireland, and we're kind of comparing notes on what works and what doesn't work and things like that. So whenever we come up with plans and things like that, we're able to learn from each other's mistakes and really kind of use the experience that the movement has gained as a whole and kind of focus it where it needs to be focused. As far as like this right now, it's not a broad membership group, right? It's a very small group of people. It's basically made up of the people who have organized a lot of the large rallies and large events you've seen in the Northeast in the past year. So, the DC rally is one that, you were at. The the people who were involved with the anti-war protests in DC as well, and several other big events and college tour events for Richard, the people that organize those. That's who really makes up the core group right now. What we are planning on doing is getting our website should be up any day now. I actually just spoke with the web designer last night, and it's coming along pretty nicely. And on that website will be how to join and how to get involved and things like that. Another thing that's great, and this is something that I always was kind of limiting with myself with IE, is that I'm able to work with many other groups. So we've got several other groups. I'm not going to name them all here or name them here. I don't know if they want to be named or not, who have basically signed on to work with us and to help us out. Which is, very promising. We don't want to like control all these groups or anything like that. Like, trust me, that's like so far out of my wheelhouse. It's like, I deal with enough drama and crap to not deal with that. But what we want to do is we want to be able to help these groups become more professional and make sure that they're not making a lot of mistakes that we originally made when we started out and things like that. And making sure that, they have the resources and they have the knowledge that they need to complete whatever kind of activism events they want to do. And the other piece to this, and we can talk a little bit about this next, is it enables us to do massive nationwide things. I don't think necessarily a Unite the Right in one place that's pre-announced, especially in a place like Charlottesville, is a great idea right now. For a Unite the Right message. However, a Unite the Right message where we could have, dozens of rallies all across the country where, TWP does theirs one place, IE does theirs one place, Patriot Front does theirs one place, all these different groups, all the regional groups, can organize their own rallies in their own cities. And we all just say, okay, we're going to do it on this date, right? That's a great Unite the Right message because it shows that we're everywhere, you know what I mean? And it's really going to kind of terrify the people who are terrified of white consciousness rising. So I think those types of coordinations and getting kind of like communication networks in place for those types of things is very, very important moving forward. Because like you said earlier, I mean, look, the left has professional activists that do this 24/7 as a job. We don't have that quite yet. I mean, I do that in a way, and it's very new, but eventually one day we will need to have that type of apparatus in place. We will need to have those types of resources that we can afford to do that type of thing. And it all kind of starts here. It all kind of starts, on the ground level, the grassroots level, with people who are willing to just kind of volunteer a lot of time. So I'm very excited for how we're moving forward. And 2018 is going to be a great year for activism, just like 2017 was.
Yeah, speaking of actually some of that activism, you guys have some plans coming up for this next month at Michigan State, the event there, the speeches that are going to take place there. Of course, I think people are all aware of the Richard Spencer College Tour that was going on last year, and I think the last event last year was Florida, and before that there were Auburn and what was it, a few others?
Texas A&M.
And yeah, A&M, Auburn, and Florida. So what's going on with Michigan State? You guys won the. It didn't go to a trial, obviously, but Michigan State gave up. They ceded their legal attempts to block the speech from taking place. So what's going on at Michigan State?
Yeah, so we're going to be able to go to Michigan State coming up here in the first week of March. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to go and use our constitutional rights to speak at a public venue. That's the thing about this, is that they keep trying to stop Richard or whomsoever to keep them from doing their, having their free speech on a public area. And this is like constitutionally set in stone. Like, this isn't going anywhere. And they're basically just trying to virtue signal to their far left radical administration, as well as some of their alumnus who don't want Richard to speak or don't want our ideas on campus. They're trying to signal like, oh, look how hard we fought. But in reality, all they're doing is delaying us, putting us through, making us jump through hoops, which is frustrating. But then they end up giving us, paying us out. I believe Kyle had tweeted out that he's, they had to pay him $27,000 or something like that in legal fees. So I encourage these schools to keep it up. Yes, it's annoying for us. It's frustrating for us. I mean, Cameron, who's a great guy, he's one of my, favorite people in the movement, because he's so relentless with everything when it comes to everything, not just getting into schools, but everything he does, he's relentless with. It takes a lot to basically jump through all their hoops. But in the end of the day, they're either going to pay us and fund our movement or just let us speak, and I'm okay with just speaking.
That's the easy thing. Is just don't fight it because you know you're going to lose. Don't get into a battle you know is going to cost you money and prestige. Just let the speech happen and move on. And it doesn't mean you endorse the speech. That's the misperception that people have and the misconception people have about a lot of this stuff is they think that by allowing speech to take place, they are endorsing the speech. And this is something the left has really bullied these institutions into internalizing, and it sucks for them because now they view it as their moral prerogative to fight against speech from anyone on the far right, and they are paying the price for doing so.
Yeah, the other thing too is like if they're not going to engage with us in the battle or the marketplace of ideas or however you term it, like we're going to run over you. And you see it. You see it in the fact that like Tucker Carlson
metaphorically, we're not making any Josh Challenger illusions here, right?
Yeah, no. Metaphorically, yeah. Like it's like we're going to win if you keep it up. You see this in the Overton window that they're not even putting up a fight against our ideas, and some of their fights against us, some of their rhetoric against us, and arguing against us is like childish, and it's become like a meme to us. Oh, it's the current year. Oh, diversity is our strength there, Goy. Like all this stuff, and it's just not working. And they're not engaging with us in debate. And frankly, it's because they know that they'll lose. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this continues to play out. There's several other colleges. I don't want to really get into which ones right now, that we're also applying for. And there's also going to be some activism related to it. I think we're pretty excited for what we're planning around this sort of this Michigan State event. And then for the spring and summer, we've got several other events we're planning. We're not ready to really reveal yet. That should also be quite fun, quite interesting. I mean, that's one of the things when I plan on activism that I really harp on. I basically studied or read a lot of left-wing activists kind of manuals and books on activism and things like that. Yes, I had to sit through reading like the Gay Revolution, which is about like LGBT activism and things like that, which is really paused. But at the end of the day, like you learn a lot. And one of the big things about activism is making sure these events are fun. And you were at the DC one, right? So, I think that was incredibly fun. Part of the whole thing is the after party, is the getting to see a lot of people who you are friends with online and things like that. And I think that we're going to continue to see a lot more of that coming out in 2018 as well. And I encourage, a lot of the people who have been worried about going to activism and things like that and going out and doing things to go to those events for that purpose, because you do meet a lot of your best friends. I mean, at this point, most of my friends, or all of my friends, are people I've met in the movement in the last year. And I'm closer to these friends than I've been close with essentially any friend I've had from high school or college or the Army or anything like that. So it's a great thing to do, to come out and do these things.
Yeah, and I think it has a good effect on like the social isolation that a lot of people feel when they feel like it's one man against the world. It's the man among the ruins type of thing. When you realize there are thousands and thousands of other people across the country that feel just like you do, and to be able to go out and meet those people and network with them and put a face to an anime avatar, you could say, and meet the people that you know online, and really confirm to yourself that these are real people. These are real people just like me, and we're not alone. Like we're all fighting for something bigger than ourselves. That's really powerful. And I know that I was really impressed when I met a lot of the people who I've met. It's kind of funny, starting about a year ago now is when I really started to network and meet other people who were into this and who I was able to meet through like YouTube and stuff. It's great to actually to have a personal connection with the people who like, oh, you watch their video or something, or oh, you like their tweets, or they have good commentary. Like to meet that person and to really get in touch with them in a deeper way is pretty cool.
Yeah, the other thing that's kind of cool about that, and this is definitely about you, is I watched your speech at the Donald Trump rally. Like I don't even remember when that was. Forever ago, it seems like. And I started following your YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff. And the first time we met was at that DC rally, and I was like, "Oh God, it's James Allison. Oh, I love your videos." It's like, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing. I mean, I think I've gotten over. There's not many people left in the movement that I haven't met. in person, and like being able to meet people whose content you consume is really awesome, because you basically find out that everyone's just like a regular guy who just cares about their people and cares about their country, and they want to see people succeed, and they're just regular people. It's not like people still do this to Mike Enoch all the time, where they notice me, senpai, and they start like worshiping him in person, stuff like that. And he's like, dude, stop! Like, I'm just a regular dude. Like, he's, what I mean? He's just a guy. And like, it's really cool to be able to see that in our movement, that it's so genuine, it's so real, and you only get to really see that when you do meet people in real life.
Yeah.
But anyway, one last thing I wanted to talk about with Operation Homeland, and something that we're going to be kind of doing and moving on, and this is something that I'm interested in kind of hearing your take on it, is kind of preparing ourselves for real political activism. So most of what the alt-right's been involved in has been meta-political activism, right? Trying to push that Overton window, try to get our issues out there, try to put together like an America First, front, show that, there's real activists that can come out and talk about, America First issues, protest against Donald Trump bombing Syria, things like that. Mm-hmm. But what we need to start thinking about is real political activism. So, knocking on door to door to get signatures, going and talking to local people about candidates and things like that. And that stuff is not stuff that's just, out of the gate. A lot of us, myself included, come from a libertarian background where like, real political activism is foreign to them. We don't come from leftist backgrounds who, like, it seems like out of the womb, the leftists automatically just knows how these things work. And one of the things I want to start doing, or we're going to start doing right away, is helping real political candidates with activism while we kind of train how it works, so that in 5 years from now, when we have openly alt-right candidates running, that we're not running a political ground game as total rookies, because it will fail. You know what I mean? Yeah. We want to get the kinks out now. So one big thing about Operation Homeland, I think, is going to be moving forward, understanding that the ultimate end goal for this is obviously, or part of it that we've announced in the opening video, was explaining that we want to do a large-scale rally in D.C., which I think we've proven time and time again is a safe place to do rallies. But also we want to prepare a very strong cadre of leaders who can put together ground game for candidates whose agendas we support. Because in 5 years and maybe even sooner, we're going to see these candidates come through, and it's going to be up to us, the real grassroots activists, to kind of help make a successful ground game happen. And it's not just going to happen overnight. So we need to start kind of going through that montage of training to get to the point where we can do that successfully.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the things I've encouraged people to do for a long time is to get involved with your local party politics. And this is not to just say go out and back the GOP on everything. No, when you go out and you interface with your local parties, with your local GOP, with your college Republicans, if you're in college, you're getting access to not only their connections, which are important to meet politicians and to participate in events, but you're also getting access to their funding, and you're getting access to control over where this party money is going. And we talk all the time about, oh, the GOP has so much money and they can throw it behind globalist open borders candidates. Yeah, that's true, but only insofar as we are not putting a wrench in that system, right? That's only going to be true as long as we are not the ones taking it over. And I know there are people who say, oh, it's impossible to take over the party apparatus or whatever. It's only going to be impossible if we keep telling ourselves that. I think we need to have a multifaceted strategy, and one of the strategies absolutely has to be taking over campaign and political apparati, I guess, and remaking them in our image, reshaping them ideologically in our image, because the next generation of Republican voters, so to speak, are much more in line with the things that Donald Trump and Paul Nealon are saying politically than they are in line with people like Paul Ryan. So you need to make sure that the place they're going to go politically is going to be one that is going to cultivate and encourage those ideas, instead of trying to stamp them out and remold their minds in a more GOP type of conservative fashion. So yeah, absolutely, getting involved with campaigns is going to be important. And once you do that and you make it clear to the politicians that are elected that you are capable of doing activism, you're capable of doing a ground game, you're capable of getting votes out, they are going to be forced to listen to you more politically, right? Once they know that these are not just fringe online weird beliefs, that these are in fact beliefs that the majority of their constituents hold and that the majority of the competent activists hold, they're going to have to listen to you if they want to get reelected. And if they don't listen to you, then you can get someone who agrees with you elected and replace them. So yeah, I mean, people like to just say, oh, don't get involved in politics, just read Siege or whatever. But I mean, that is very, very short-sighted in my opinion. And the political solutions are out there. The activism is an essential part of getting us to a place where we can pursue political solutions to fix this country, fix this nation, and we need to do it. It sucks, folding envelopes or licking envelopes and knocking doors. It sucks. It's work that doesn't feel rewarding at the time, but consider it an investment for the future. Consider it an investment for the networking and practical skills that you're going to be learning that will be very beneficial going forward.
Yep, I totally agree. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited for the future of activism in the alt-right. It is exciting because it's such a new thing. I mean, the right wing has traditionally been just terrible at activism, and we've made mistakes, but we've also learned a lot, and we're moving forward, and we've got a lot of people with a lot of passion that we can use and a lot of energy that we can use. So I'm excited to see kind of where this takes us. And I'm going to be doing this for many years, I think. So I'm excited that the first year down was successful, and we're going to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the only future that we can really we're going to really have, because I mean the online movement is good. The online coordination and collaboration is a great thing, and the ability to build online communities is awesome. But to exert real political change and to exert real world power, to demonstrate real power over the political system, you need to have more than just online organizations and movements. You need to destigmatize these ideas in the minds of your average GOP voter, in the minds of your average, white working class Republican, because people already believe a lot of what we talk about. People already believe that we should protect our country's culture and heritage. They believe that it's okay to be white. They believe that it's okay to be a white, straight Christian male, etc. But they don't feel comfortable saying it because it feels like all the forces in the world are aligned against them. So if we can change that stigma and destigmatize having the opinions that the majority of Americans have, then the wheels will be in motion and things will be going in a very positive direction, I imagine. So definitely important to keep up the activism, and I definitely encourage people to get involved with any sort of activist group there is. And again, even if you don't have a group near you, consider starting one, or consider taking over the ones that do exist and reshaping them in a better image, reshaping them in an image that you agree with more politically. Like, if the only group on your college is the college Republicans, okay, go with a couple friends and take it over and again, remake it in a better political image, because you can do that. Like, I've done that on my campus. When I joined my group, there were like 3 people, and we ended my last year with like 35 people, and we were like building Trump walls and telling immigrants that we're going to close the borders. Like, it was great, and anybody can do that. It doesn't take a special talent to do that.
Yep. No, I totally agree.
Requires confidence, which we need to start having.
I don't think I'm going to be able to take over any college Republicans anytime soon. I think that ship has sailed for me a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, even for people who are out of college, like, dude, your local GOP chapter, I guarantee you, it's like 10 dudes sitting around in a room, and they're all like over 55.
No, I don't mean that. I mean like them knowing who I am and kvetch.
Oh yeah.
I actually, right before we started this podcast, I went to the gas station down the street, and some guy, like, he fucking knew who I was. It sucked, honestly. Like, he was a Hispanic guy and just started screaming about Charlottesville. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do any subverting of any type of institutions anytime soon.
Yeah. Celebrity life, man. Paparazzi everywhere.
Well, yeah, the paparazzi, like with chimichangas and
I don't know, man. He might be one of those based castizos. 75% meme. He might have been a fan.
He was screaming about my haircut.
Hey, the undercut is actually there's a lot of Cubans who have the undercut. So I don't know.
Dude, he had the undercut. That's why it was hilarious. But no, the trick to the undercut, little known trick to the undercut. Based Koreans, rooftop Koreans make the best undercuts. That's who cuts my hair.
Interesting. Yeah. I gotta go get shaved. Yeah, I know. I gotta go get mine retoned up here pretty soon.
I recommend Koreans. I'm sure you've got a lot over there too. They diversity is our strength, but not because of the food, but because of the undercuts.
Yeah, every time I've gotten a haircut at like a place that's like run by all Chinese, like no complaints, man. It's been pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. That's where we should all be getting our haircuts, at Chinese barbershops.
Yeah. Further evidence for bleach, right, and white Shinto. Exactly right. Cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, man. It was a great time. We'll definitely do it again. Where can people not find you on Twitter? What is not your Twitter account?
So my Twitter account is definitely not at @Sheli_Mosley. That's 100% not me. That is a parody account that has nothing to do with me. But if you want to see that awesome parody account and maybe follow what I might be doing, you can follow that on Twitter. I'll have the Operation Homeland website up shortly, and that'll be really easy to get a hold of me. You can always email me at eli.f.mosley@gmail.com, and I try to get back to those every couple days. That's pretty much where you can find me. I'm also on Gab, just at Eli Mosley, just one word or whatever. I don't post too much on Gab, but I do check it for people trying to get a hold of me quite often as well. But yeah, you'll see me at Michigan State as well with Spencer, and you'll see me doing some really fun activism in the DC area coming up that I'm sure everyone who listens to this podcast will immensely enjoy. And so will a certain foreign interest group as well. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure they'll be big fans. Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for coming on again. Appreciate the activism. I think if more people started taking your lead on activism, we would be in a much better place. And I myself, I wish I'd done I wish I had done more activism myself, because it is something that needs to be done going forward. So
it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's fun, and you meet people, and there's really no downside to it, especially for somebody who's public about your politics. Like, dude, there's not a lot of reason not to get involved with activism. So definitely looking forward to what you guys have in store for 2018, and we'll stay in touch. We'll have you back sometime.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And again, if you're listening to the show, head on over to patreon.com/AmericaVerseMedia. Help out with the program. We do appreciate it. At amfirstmedia.com for articles. We'll see you guys all next week.